the middle to Vucinovic. He dropped it off to Kyrou, back to Thomas to the far wing. Parayko! Score! Colton Parayko! Up to Kyrou now with Thomas. Kyrou tries to leave before Vucinovic has to reach back for it. Hits the defenseman coming on. Perunovic to Thomas. He scores! What a goal by Robert Thomas. Top corner, stick side. 2-1, St. Louis. 2 seconds left. Parayko there to put it into the corner. Bring out the Zamboni. The Blues beat the best in the West tonight with a 2-1 win on home ice over the Vancouver Canucks. A come-from-behind win, and they're now 6-3 under new head coach Drew Bannister.
This is hard, you know. That's a real good hockey team over there. I think they were 8-2 going into tonight's game, and we stuck with it. We turned the page on the games that we saw over the past weekend where, you know, we might have been the better team against Colorado, but we didn't find a way to win that hockey game. And tonight we found a way to win a hockey game against a really good hockey team.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. Grant France is doing a great job helping us out back from the studio today. That is what it sounded like last night right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN, as the Blues get a massive 2-1 win at home against the Vancouver Canucks. Alex, I've been trying to think of the right way to phrase this, because is this the best win of the season? I don't know. You could make an argument for some of the others. The most revealing win of the season, you could make a case for that. Maybe most important win for me personally of the season would be the way that I would frame it. Because we talked so much about how this is your fork in the road moment. You heard there Drew Bannister, who said previously, hey, this is going to be hard. This is a hard stretch of hockey, and we need hard right now. That was a hard game, a hard-fought win for them. They got down early, and then they find a way to come back, something that this team had been incapable of doing previously this season. They get in there, and they've got to find a way through grit, hard work, and determination to hold on to the lead in the third period. When you're going up against the best offense in the Western Conference so far this year, and you hold them to 1 goal, a good defensive all-around performance, great goaltending last night by Jordan Binnington, who had been going through some recent struggles. An all-around team win is what that was last night. That was damn impressive, man. I am not bought all the way into this team. I am still very skeptical of them as a legitimate playoff contender. But in the last month, they beat Vegas 2-1 in overtime. They beat Dallas 4-3 in overtime. They beat Florida 4-1. They beat Dallas again 2-1. And now you beat Vancouver 2-1? Hey, man, at some point I've got to say, okay, maybe there's more here than I am giving them credit for.
Yeah, I mean, like, as much as we still remember those Winnipeg Jets games and Vancouver Canucks where they got shellacked 5-1, that was a very different team than what this team is right now. Last night I looked at this, so they're 6-1-1 this season through 37 games in 1-goal games.
Damn.
Last year they only won 10 games in 1-goal games. So, I mean, like, that was a problem last year. We all remember when the other team pulled the goaltender, you were thinking, well, this one's going to be tied or this one's going to be headed into overtime. And last night, you took on a team that has scored 142 goals, averaging 3.8 goals per game, and they had their goaltender pulled for 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And they put like 4 shots on goal in that time frame. That's where this team's at right now. It's the mental fortitude to go out there and pull off the victory. It's recognizing where you're at. And the part that was impressive for me was the fact that you got down early. Connor Garland scores that goal, and we all were thinking, bleep, here we go. Because this is a Vancouver team, by the way, that played 2 nights ago and put 6 goals up on the Ottawa Senators, 5 in the first period. Meanwhile, the Blues have been off for 4 games, and we know what that means, rust. But instead, after that Connor Garland goal, nothing. Second period. I don't even remember Elias Pettersson and JT Miller playing in that second period last night. That's how good the Blues were. They were patient. They stuck with what has worked for them over this last stretch, and they went out there and they pulled out the victory. Was it the most impressive win of the season? To me, it's a tie for first, as Tony La Russa would say, with that Colorado Avalanche 8-goal performance. But in terms of where you're at, starting this stretch, pushing for a playoff spot, individual performances in that game, including Thomas, Parayko, Binnington, yeah, that was a very revealing game into, if you think this team's a playoff contender, last night was the reason why.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We got this from the 618. By the way, I want to hear from you guys throughout the show today. Go ahead and get those texts in on the Air Comfort Service text line. You can always watch us as well on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. There's a chat in there. We'd love to hear from you over there as well. We got this from the 618. Guys, the team's ceiling has never been in question. It's the sustainability and consistency that has been in question. I question all of those things. The ceiling, the sustainability, the consistency, all of the above to me is fair to question at this point in the season because I don't know what any of those things look like. The ceiling, though, the reason why I still think that's in question, like even after last night's game, you really got contributions from the same things that you've been getting contributions from for the last month now.
Yeah, Robert Thomas
the top
and the
line,
defenseman.
specifically Robert Thomas, and the defenseman with Colton Parayko putting a puck in the back of the net. So I think the ceiling of this team is capped because of their inability to get that depth of scoring that they had when they were at their best back in 21-22. That team was really good because of the pack mentality that Doug Armstrong talks so much about. They don't have that this year. That doesn't exist. Now, maybe they can develop it more as the season continues, but right now, you've got one line really offensively that's getting you much. But if they continue to sustain this level of performance, well, maybe the ceiling is higher than what I'm giving them credit for because their performance has been consistent and sustainable on that top line. So I think all of it's fair to question, but as they continue to stack these performances on top of each other, I have to start to listen to what I'm watching on the ice and say, okay, maybe there's a little bit more here than what I've been giving them credit for.
Yeah, and for this 10-game stretch that we talked about going into last night's game where they're playing a very difficult schedule, the way they're going to win and the way they're going to rack up points to kind of stay in the playoff picture or even climb back into the playoff picture and not fade away is what you saw last night. That's the formula, as you mentioned. It is the Thomas line and Thomas playing like the all-star that he is. Colton Parayko being a shutdown pairing as well and getting good goaltending from Binnington and Hofer when he gets the occasional start. That is the formula. Now, I think it's completely fair to question what the ceiling is with it, and I heard Joey say this on postgame last night where at some point this line or Thomas or Parayko's going to go through a rough stretch. Yeah. That's just the nature of an 82-game season. It's going to happen at some point, and that's when you've got to rely on the depth of scoring or for another pairing defensively to kind of pick it up, or maybe in Hofer if Binnington goes through a cold stretch to kind of carry the load. So, yes, I like what we saw last night. That was a really impressive win, and I would say it was the best win of the season for this team. And you see what the formula is to get through this 10-game stretch. But at some point, they are going to have to get more, and that's when you're really going to find out what the ceiling is for them.
Somebody on the power play step up?
That would be great.
Get that going a little bit.
They had sustained zone time.
I heard they were generating A-plus opportunities from Steve Ott last night.
Yeah, they were generating A-plus opportunities.
They barely put the puck on net on the power play.
It was an A-plus opportunity. Come on, man. Keep your negativity to yourself. The real reason you were questioning the ceiling of the Blues at the beginning of the season.
Now I still do.
Well, but now I think we're starting to not guess it as much because of the play of certain players. We were guessing it at the beginning of the season because did we think Robert Thomas was the number one centerman?
No.
Did we think Colton Parayko could be a top defenseman in the National Hockey League?
Me, no, you, yes.
Were we concerned that Jordan Binnington wasn't going to be able to be a good enough goaltender in the regular season to
I
get
was
them?
concerned you were not.
So, there were areas. I'm starting to see a trend here, which is really odd. There were reasons to look at the ceiling of this team and say, I wonder if this is more of a rebuild because of those factors. But now, when you're starting to see, and it's not just because of one game, it's in the last 20 games, Robert Thomas has been playing like a number one centerman. It's really all season that Colton Parayko has been one of their best defensemen. Because of those, you take that questioning of the ceiling away, and now you start looking at it and saying, okay, I'm starting to see a picture of what Doug Armstrong is seeing, and now it's just biding your time, waiting for some of these other pieces to come in and help this team get to that next level.
I think you're having two different conversations, though. You're talking about the ceiling for the organization versus the ceiling for this specific group of players in 2024.
I think if there was a ceiling for people that was beyond just getting into the playoffs, they were mistaking themselves.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm saying I think the ceiling for this group of players in 2024 is capped. Long term, the ceiling is the roof, so to speak, right? In the old words of Michael Jordan, they can be a special group with Robert Thomas as a number one center and Colton Parayko as a number one defenseman and Jordan Bennington as a number one goalie when they attach the necessary talent around them. I don't think that talent's here right now.
Agreed.
I think right now what you're seeing is, man, you barely have a middle six forward group right now. Like, they, night in, night out, don't seem to show up. I thought Jake Neighbors was pretty solid last night. He was all over on the
8
ice.
shots on goal.
I kind of like occasionally what I'm seeing from Kevin Hayes. I thought Nathan Walker on the fourth line added a little something last night. I'm excited to see what it looks like as Jakub Vrana gets back into this lineup and puts Toropchenko back hopefully onto that fourth line where I think he has served his best purpose down there. But the ceiling for this team, I still believe, is capped. And so, like, we got somebody on the text line that said, oh, you guys are having a party for the team coming off of that win last night. Let's chill. I'm not having a party for this team. I have been skeptical of them all season long. And my skepticism leads me to believe I think they're going to be a seller at the deadline and will miss on the playoffs. The thing that I'm questioning now is, okay, can their ceiling be get into the playoffs and maybe be interesting in the first round? That's what we're having a conversation about. Nobody's trying to sell you on this team as a cup contender. Nobody's trying to sell you on everything's fixed. Don't even question anything. Army is God. Nobody's selling you on that, guys. Nobody. But last night was a really good win. Robert Thomas was exceptional once again, and he is now on pace for 90 points on the season and a plus 31 while on the ice. Alex, I saw a stat last night. This came from DeFranks in the STL Today piece that he put together. At even strength this year, the Blues have outscored their opponents 39-23 with Robert Thomas on the ice. When he is not on the ice this year at even strength, St. Louis has been outscored 71-46.
Hot damn.
He's like our LeBron James.
They are a plus 16 with him on the ice. They are a minus 25 with him off of it. Robert Thomas is arguably one of the most valuable players in the NHL this season. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying when I say they have a line that is working.
Yep.
They need everything else to come together for them to have the ceiling that I think some are hoping they can.
That's the biggest question right now, and frankly, I'm not sure you're going to get anything else from that unless you break up that top line, and I would imagine that's a non-starter for a lot of people for the way that they're playing right now, but I mean, we've seen every combination you can come up with. I mean, heck, they're going with Jakub Vrana right now to try and spark some more offense in your bottom six. But Shen has played with everybody, and it hasn't really worked. Hayes has played with everybody, and it hasn't really worked. You're trying to get a fourth line. Right now, unfortunately for the Blues, is you got to rely on this top line. The real question will become what happens when they disappear, who steps up.
And that's the answer is probably it looks ugly. If we're
Probably.
that's probably the honest answer. But right now, looks pretty damn good. So it was a lot of fun to watch last night. Blues get a big win against the Vancouver Canucks. This is the continuation of the trend of them playing against legit top contenders for the foreseeable future. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Grant Francis back in the studio for us today. You guys can get involved. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask Us Anything is coming up at 11:45. But coming up next, there are some conflicting ideas on whether or not the Cardinals are actually in on Dylan Cease. We'll give you all of the perspectives, give you ours as well. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
I mean, the Cardinals have been interested in sticking in those conversations. They made that clear. They have some of the young pieces that teams want. Left-handed bats are in demand. Versatile players are in demand. High on-base percentage or, metric darlings are in demand. The Cardinals are not eager or looking or interested in trading Lars Nootbaar, but they have some depth there at second base. They have some depth elsewhere in the outfield that they'll talk, and that's going to draw them into these conversations too.
That voice you just heard was Derek Gould. He was on with the opening drive earlier today. If you missed any of their conversation with the Cardinals beat writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you can go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center. Should have turned it on first.
Guys, there are conflicting reports on where the Cardinals stand with Dylan Cease. There was a big report last night over in The Athletic from Ken Rosenthal, which essentially said Dylan Cease will not be a White Sox in 2024. The question is, where will he go? And there doesn't seem to be a firm idea on what the answer to that is just yet. The Dodgers are in, the Red Sox are in, the Orioles are in. There are other teams that are going to be on the outside looking in. There are a lot of teams that are interested in what is a young, borderline ace-level starter, and we can have our conversations about if he is that or not, but he's good. He's a really talented young starter with multiple years of control remaining on his contract. So this is what Ken Rosenthal had to say. Quote, "The White Sox are weighing offers on Cease. The Yankees and Orioles are among those to express, quote, sincere, end quote, interest. Other teams are also serious, however. While the exact list of suitors is not known, the Dodgers, Cardinals, and Red Sox are among the teams possibly in the mix." He then adds, the Dodgers, even after spending $1 billion this offseason, are not ruling out the addition of another starter. Neither are the Cardinals. So, that was Ken Rosenthal's report. Also in The Athletic earlier today, Katie Woo said the following, quote, "Mozeliak might explore a trade to acquire another starter, but it is neither a high priority nor a high likely." Katie adds that her opinion is that if the Cardinals decide to improve their rotation through a trade, it is more likely to come near the trade deadline, but now we're too far ahead of ourselves.
So
Reading
who's
Katie's
right?
piece, it did not sound like the Cardinals are an aggressive pursuer of Dylan Cease, but they're at least in the mix, according to Ken Rosenthal. Alex, what was your read when you read between the lines from these two reports and just what we know background on the Cease conversation?
I mean, my read is more along the lines of Katie Woo than Ken Rosenthal, which seems odd to say, but Katie is very tied in with the Cardinals. Not saying Rosenthal is not, but
to be fair, Rosenthal said the Cardinals aren't ruling out adding a starter via trade and that they are, quote, on the list of teams possibly in the mix.
Yeah, about as
I'll take it, though.
About as JP Morosi as you can ask on that one. But I lean more towards the Katie Woo side because I look at this as John Mozeliak viewing his team as done. And as much as it's great to talk about Dylan Cease being available, and as much as we all agree that this rotation still needs a massive upgrade going into the season, I don't think Mozeliak views it that way. I think they view this Cardinals team as ready to go for the upcoming year. Maybe an addition to the bullpen here, but it's not going to be anything significant like a Dylan Cease or going out there to bring in this Josh Hader-esque pitcher. They view this as a complete team, and if there's upgrades, it's going to take place at the trade deadline. So I think the Dylan Cease or any starting pitcher ship has sailed.
Yeah, I think they're probably on the outside looking in. But when I say that is, I think they've basically said, hey, here's our best offer. This is what we can offer you. And if the market falls back down, then let's have a conversation. You know, if Baltimore ends up balking at it because it's going to cost them some of their best prospects probably, and the Yankees don't end up making a trade for it, and it starts to fall back down, and the Dodgers say, no, we're not in, then the Cardinals will come in and go, okay, hey, I know we're the fourth team. We're your fourth pick.
Yeah, so when none of that happens, it's not going to be the Cardinals.
Yeah, we don't mind being the fourth pick. They're basically sitting on the outside saying, if that market drops a lot, then we'll jump in on Dylan Cease. But
basically, they got to pay us $50 million like Arenado.
Yeah, they're not good. I don't think they're like in on it seriously. I think it is basically, hey, if the market doesn't develop, then we'll try and pounce on it. But as you saw, like Baltimore, they make a ton of sense for Dylan Cease, and they have the assets to go and make that kind of a deal happen. And I think they will. So I don't expect the Cardinals to go make this move. And I think a big reason for it is there's no push in the Central. Like, they can almost use this season right now as like a transition year with the rotation, to where they sign a couple stopgaps, you give another year of development to a McGreevy, Graceffo, Hintz, TK Roby, and you can still win like 85 games right now and potentially win this division. Like, there's no push against the Cardinals, so they can use this as a transition year and just kind of sit back and see what the Cease market develops.
Yeah, I just don't want to hear about the deadline. Like, if that's your approach, I don't need to hear
That's
it, man.
when you start building for October. You don't build for October now.
If you want to talk about, hey, we're going to go light on our bullpen, we're going to add a guy that's $5 million instead of one of these top-end relievers like a Hader or a Hicks, et cetera, for $10+ million per year, I can totally listen to that. How, hey, we're going to go lighter here because we're going to add to that group at the trade deadline. We've seen proof that they are willing and able to do that at the trade deadline. I have zero evidence that they're willing to add a frontline starting pitcher given what the cost is going to be at the deadline for those guys. Sometimes the cost for those pitchers is higher at the trade deadline than it is at this point in the offseason because of the urgency that teams demand it at the deadline. Or they're looking at it and they're saying, man, if we don't get that guy, we are probably not going to win a World Series. And there's injuries that play into that because guys go into the season with expectations and then their team falls flat because Jacob deGrom gets hurt, for example. And then they're like, maybe we need to trade TK Roby and Thomas Ajacey for Jordan Montgomery because, God, that guy's got to be our savior. And then he does. And then they win the World Series and you go accordingly. The Cardinals aren't that team. They never do that. They aren't going to get in on the number one starters at the trade deadline. So miss me with that. They made a big move for Jordan Montgomery, and that's like the creme de la creme of what they have done at the deadline for a starter in the last decade, probably. Man, they didn't start him in that postseason. They decided to go to Adam Wainwright in Game 3 over Jordan Montgomery. So don't tell me about how you're going to go out there and get this frontline starter at the deadline. Either you're going to get him now, or you're not going to get him, and this is just the rotation that we should evaluate you with.
And acquiring a number one starter at the deadline means you're all in. And let's just, if you're the Cardinals, just be honest with yourselves and the fan base. You never go all in. You always want to, we talked about this earlier this week about how I don't think they really view right now with Goldschmidt and Arenado as a winning window, because if you define a winning window, you have to almost push some chips in. And they don't want to do that because they like to maintain the success over a 10 to 20 year period rather than 3 to 5 years and then struggle for 3 to 5 years. So if you're going to say, well, we could go get that guy at the deadline, don't kid yourself. That's an all-in move, and that's not a move that you've ever shown willingness to make. So like you said, you either do it now or you don't do it at all. There is no, well, maybe we'll get involved. No, you won't. Just quit kidding yourself. Know yourselves internally and say, we won't be involved at the trade deadline discussions for number one.
It's the equivalent of like when you're single and you're at a bar and you see a good-looking girl and you're like, I want to go talk to her, but you're like, I don't know. Please, somebody else go talk. So go.
No, it's your buddy that does it.
Yeah.
Your buddy who's saying, he's talking up a big game all night. He's like, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time. Man, you've been out with me 100 times. You have never once gone up and talked to another girl. You are absolutely not going to go talk to that one.
Well, the Cardinals,
it's not happening.
Cardinals also feel like they're waiting for somebody else to do it so they don't have to. So it's like when you're calling and you don't want them to answer, like, God, please don't pick up, please don't pick up, please don't pick up, and then nobody picks up. That's the Cardinals. Like, please don't call me back, please don't call me back. Oh.
They're waiting for a starting pitcher of a number one caliber to fall into their lap, like the Arenado and the Goldschmidts
like
kind of
Chris
did.
Sale.
The thing is, though, is everybody every year needs a number one starter and needs starting pitching. Not every year does everybody need a third baseman of Nolan Arenado's all-star caliber level.
The amount of teams that are able to go get that guy is different. Dylan Cease does not have a no-trade clause.
Yeah.
He does not make $35 million on an annual basis. He has not given a list of exactly two teams, in which he would be willing to go, all of which applied to Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, that's really what this is. The player needs to say, I want to be a Cardinal for the Cardinals to get involved with it.
Now, he decided himself, essentially, I'm going to be a Dodger, because based on everything that he has said publicly since that trade, he wanted to go to L.A. He wanted to play for the Dodgers. And his way of, he didn't have a no-trade clause, so his way of guiding himself to the Dodgers is, the Rays were able to get more in return for him via trade if he is willing to sign a contract extension. And he said, hey, I'm willing to sign a contract extension with them. And that is how he allowed himself to have the leverage. That probably doesn't exist here with Dylan Cease, unless he also is willing to sign an extension with 2 or 3 teams, and then maybe he does have a little bit more leverage, but this is not a one-year rental for him. He is already under contract for the next 2 years at, let's call it roughly $20 million combined for the life of that contract. Every team in baseball should be interested in that, every single one of them. And if you're trying to contend for anything meaningful this year and you're not at least talking with the White Sox about, hey, what would it cost if we wanted to get in on these negotiations? You should fire your general manager because he's incompetent. This is the kind of deal that every team in baseball should at least be taking under consideration. And then you find out if you make it worth your while or not. The other thing, somebody on the text line, by the way, said, guys, do you think that the Cardinals would be interested in Josh Hader? No. According to Derek Gould, they are looking for relievers that are in the $5 million range. Katie Wu said something very similar in her piece earlier today on The Athletic. I don't think they're going after Jordan Hicks anymore. I don't think they're going after Robert Stevenson. I definitely don't think that they're in the conversations for Josh Hader. We can go ahead and reassess where we're at with the bullpen. We're talking about guys like maybe, and this is a reach, Phil Maton or Brent Suter. Those are the guys that we can have conversations about, and those aren't particularly interesting, so we're not going to spend much more time on it. Coming up next, the head coach of the Springfield Thunderbirds is going to join us to talk about what he has seen this year from the Blues' young players out there, and what did he see at his short stint in which we got to see Jakub Vrana in the AHL? What can he bring back to the Blues this time around? We'll talk to him next about that. All of that coming up here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, Robert Thomas was named an All-Star for the first time in his career. He went on to score the game-winning goal in a 2-1 victory for the Blues over the Pacific Division leading Vancouver Canucks. Blues improved to 19-17 and 1, good for 39 points on the season, just 2 behind Seattle for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Blues will be back in action tomorrow as they travel to Carolina to take on the Hurricanes. Pregame will be at 6, puck drop at 7 here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. We'll have some World Juniors games today as well, and we'll keep you informed on those. Otto Stenberg and Theo Lindstein for Sweden, some Blues prospects, and then Jimmy Snuggerud for the U.S. as both those teams try to go for gold. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are happy to be joined right now via the 101 ESPN hotline by the interim head coach of the Springfield Thunderbirds. He is Daniel Tkaczuk, joining us here on 101 ESPN. We wanted to reach out to Daniel because the Blues are getting some significant contributions right now and will continue to do so throughout the rest of the season from some of the players that have spent time up in Springfield. Daniel, first of all, we appreciate you for joining us on what I know is a very busy day for you. How you doing, man?
Doing well, you guys. It's a happy new year to everybody over there.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you hopping on with us, Daniel. I wanted to start out by talking about the former head coach of the Springfield Thunderbirds, who's now doing a great job here in St. Louis with the Blues. That's Drew Bannister. You have a unique perspective on him because you've worked with him as an assistant, and now you have his old job there as the interim coach with Springfield. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what it is like to be a coach with Drew Bannister?
Well, Drew and I go back a long ways, actually, all the way back to our OHL days in Owen Sound, where he came in as the associate and worked with him there for 3 years. And then when we went over to San Antonio, I was already with the Blues, and then we had the relationship there and been working together hand in hand for the last, 6 years inside the Blues organization. What the Blues got in a coach is a very detailed, very organized, and very smart. He understands the game very well, understanding the team, the players he's got, and finding ways to keep having the group improve on a day-to-day basis to get the most out of his hockey club.
Daniel, what's this been like for you? I know we heard from Drew how much of a whirlwind it was from getting the phone call from Doug Armstrong to joining the Blues and then jumping right into game action. The moment that Drew Bannister found out, I think you had a game that same day taken over as the head coach.
That's correct. So got the call very late from Doug, and it was just one of those, we're looking to make a change, and we're bringing Drew up to St. Louis, and we believe it would be a good fit for you to take over in Springfield. And I was up for the opportunity, very thankful for the opportunity, and now we're just we've had a good program here with Drew and trying to continue that success while providing my own touches along the way.
Daniel, I did want to ask you about a player that made his way back up to the Blues today. He's in the lineup, according to what we're seeing at morning skate, as a fourth-line player for them, and that's Jakub Vrana, who spent a little bit of time here at the beginning of the season with the Blues and then spent a short stint with you down there in Springfield. What did you see from Jakub Vrana in the brief amount of time that you had him?
Well, we were, a player like that gets sent down, and he's a good player. We knew the skill set coming in, but not seeing him firsthand. We didn't really know what we were going to get. And we knew the shot, the skating, those offensive, the package that he had, but didn't realize how strong he is. He's a very strong player on his skates, and he can really separate with his skating. And when he combines that, from the offensive side to using that in other areas around the puck and to help us defend so we can transition to the other way, he was a real asset for us. And he was a key catalyst in some of the comebacks that we did have when we were facing deficits earlier in games. And he really did have a lot of chemistry with Zach Bolduc that was down here, one of our first rounders. And, he helped his game while he was here.
Daniel, you spent time, of course, playing in the National Hockey League. You played in the American Hockey League. For a player like Jakub Vrana, who is used to being in the NHL, is that a kind of eye-opening moment for a player when you go to the American Hockey League to focus on maybe other elements of your game, not just the offense?
Well, first, some of these players, they maybe have been in and out of the lineup, so to get them back into shape, the practices, the games, getting a regular shift. I think we had them up around 20 minutes a couple games, so to get them into there, then okay, now let's look at the details of our game. Can't be overly critical, players that haven't played, and then now it's okay. How can we get your game back to where you can then get recalled and then be an asset to go back into the Blues lineup?
You mentioned his chemistry that he had with Bolduc, and he's a guy that Blues fans, we have not had the opportunity to see him yet here in St. Louis. What have you seen from him so far in this season, his development from where he was on day one to where he is today?
Well, he's made some very positive steps, and it's we're always looking at it as a week to week, month to month. Is he getting better? The American Hockey League is very challenging. The way the schedule is, the travel schedule. We do play 3 games in 2.5 days, which we'll see in this weekend. And there's going to be ups and downs with young players, but to add that consistency, to add where there's details that do matter in the overall picture of a player's game, not just the goals and assists. He's got a great offensive package. Those will always come as long as he plays the right way, and that he understands when he hasn't been playing well, how can he get his game back on track to get that consistency that we all want out of him and he wants out of himself.
We're talking with Springfield Thunderbirds head coach Daniel Tkaczuk here on BK and Ferrario. And Daniel, speaking of that, is that the toughest part from transitioning from junior hockey or college hockey to professional hockey, whether it's in the AHL or NHL, focusing on how you can impact games beyond the offense?
It really is, and there's so much going on at the pro level, the detail, the physical requirements to play in the American Hockey League or at the National Hockey League level. It is a lot. The travel elements, how good the competition is, be it on a system standpoint and on a skill set standpoint, right? Some of the ways that a player like Zach Bolduc used to score in junior just don't work at the pro level. And it takes time for them to realize and adjust on where you can't just trade chances at this level, and to understand, okay, this is where I got to play a more solid game. This is where pucks got to get deep. This is where I got to move my feet to extend possession. And those are things that I'd say almost 100% of the young players got to go through. And it's up to them as they learn that they keep making positive steps forward to mature their game, to put themselves in the best situation possible, every game that they suit up.
I feel like we're seeing some of that right now at the NHL level from Scott Perunovich, Daniel, and you got to see him at his best while he was down in the AHL in recent seasons, whenever he was healthy down there. What did you see from him when he was going well, and what do you think needs to click for that to be able to sustain itself at the NHL level?
Well, Scotty's such a competitor, right? Like the one thing he is, he loves playing. He loves finding ways to win, and he sees the game in such an offensive mindset. And the way he passes the puck, the way he can generate offense from the back end, and that's when he was at his best. He was, our PP, catalyst to working the top, finding ways to be a threat, and then finding ways to make everybody else. Like the pucks, the passes that he gives them, but they're also a threat as well. And when he was on that game, he was really controlling the game from the back end. And for him, unfortunately, he had some injury issues and finding a way to get to his game. that took a bit of time. So when you can see that when it's on, oh man, it's fun to watch. And I know, the forwards, they're getting passes they didn't even realize that they were going to get. But that's Scotty, and much like many other young players, he's had to work on areas of his game to become a more well-rounded defender. And I think you're starting to see him make those growth steps up there with the Blues this season.
And Daniel, the hardest part for fans to remember is, you're dealing with people, and every single person is a different individual. And I know Drew has talked a lot about just the confidence from Scott Perunovich and trying to build that up. From a coaching perspective, how tough is that to focus on the confidence level of each individual player throughout the ups and downs of seasons?
And it is challenging. I think the one thing is, as much as coaches demand a lot of themselves, these young players, they're competitive. And they are so hard on themselves in certain ways. Oh, geez, I'm not scoring, or didn't have a good game, and they kind of wear that. So we understand it's a long season. There's a lot of games. You're going to have ups and downs, and that to understand that, okay, how can we simplify things? Have a couple of things that they know that they need to do to play well. To sometimes just hit the reset button when things aren't going well. And I think that's where us as a Blues organization, we have a tremendous development staff like Glenn Wesley, who's been working with Scott Perunovich while he was down here, does a fantastic job communicating, being a different voice to say, here's where we need you to be better, and here's where we can help you get to your game to be the best player you can be. We have Chris Thorburn on the forward side of things helping us out down here. And those things are critical to these young players to have that voice, that understanding voice of what their game is to help them along the way.
Daniel, final question that I've got for you. This is something that's been brought up as a topic of conversation in recent years here in St. Louis. Army has talked about it. We heard Berube talk about it previously, and Bannister has also discussed it. Is the difference in coaching young players today versus coaching young players, when you were going through the minor league system for the NHL? What have you noticed in that regard? What is the biggest change in coaching young players in 2024 versus, 1997?
Well, we grew up differently. These young players, they're so well trained, from the coaching at the youth levels to the skills coaching, the performance coach, strength and conditioning, mental performance, and they do have a lot of information at their disposal. It's not uncommon for us to hear a player, I watched all my shifts after a weekend on their own, right? So, but to help them just understand, to provide the key context to these young players on how their game can help the overall team game. They kind of always want to, okay, what's their role? How does their game change perhaps on a night-to-night basis? Sometimes they're on different lines, and they want to know that. They want to understand that, and they want to know how they can get better. Even when they're playing well, they're young, they're driven, they've put a lot to get to this American League level or the National Hockey League level, and they want to be coached. But to understand that, where's their game when they're not going well, they want to understand why. And then when it is going well, why is it going well? And then how can they even get better? And I think that's one of the things that these young players really do take to, is that even when they're doing well, they want to get better too. And that's something that we didn't have maybe perhaps in the coaches in the past. They just, he's playing great, don't need to talk to him, move along. But I think that's something that's changed for a positive side as well in these young players.
Outstanding perspective. Daniel, we really appreciate the time. I know you got a game tonight with the team and a busy weekend with 3 games in 3 nights. So thank you for taking some time out of your day to give us some perspective on the Springfield Thunderbirds. Good luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Anytime, gentlemen. Take care.
There you go. Daniel Tkaczuk, head coach for the Springfield Thunderbirds, with some perspective on the minor leagues, which I think is always important.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good, especially this year when we have so many players that we're watching right now that played at some point under him down there.
Yeah.
I would say the one that I'm most interested in tonight or over the next couple of days is what they're going to get out of Jakub Vrana.
Yeah.
And
man, did you hear him say that he used his size down in the minors.
A little interesting.
I did too, but I mean, like, here's the thing. We always think guys are small, and a lot of these guys are stronger than we give them credit for. Like, Jaden Schwartz was one of the tinier dudes on the Blues roster. He was one of the toughest guys to get the puck off of his stick in the corners. So that's why I was so curious, like, when guys go to the minors, and it's not like Jakub Vrana's never been to the minors. Like, he did this in Detroit. He was in the minors. Yeah. But when you go, it's one of those eye-opening moments that it's like, man, not that it sounds horrible, but like Joey always talks about, it's the difference between riding a first-class plane or riding a bus.
Be down there. Like, nobody wants to go from the NHL, where there have been a veteran presence in the league, to going and riding on buses again in the AHL.
It's an eye-opening moment if you're Jakub Vrana, and now you get back up here where Daniel Tkachuk has worked with him, just like Drew Bannister would have worked with him down in the minors, and you're coming back somewhere where Tkachuk is a very similar mindset to Drew Bannister. I don't know what Verana's going to look like in these next few games, but what I could tell you is it sounds like...
I know what his role's going to be.
What's that?
I know what his role's going to be.
Goal scorer.
Yeah.
Goal scorer.
You want to hear the lines today during practice?
Sure. Did they put him up there with Robert Thomas?
Top 6?
Top line.
Top line is the same. Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou.
Mistake.
Second line remains the same. Sod, Shin, Neighbors. Third line remains the same. Torchenko, Hayes, and Kapanen.
Is he scratched? Does the fourth line remain the same?
Fourth line has changed.
Oh, has it? What happened?
Walker, Sonny, Vrana.
Yeah, there you go. Depth of scoring. Depth of scoring.
I have a prediction.
That he'll be playing in the top 9 by the end of that game.
Oh.
Yes. I do not think that he will play when there is, up by a goal with 5 minutes remaining.
I could have told you that prediction.
He's going to be on that third line. Yeah. It'll be Vrana, Hayes, and Kapanen at some point before the end of the game. I feel like everybody thinks I'm a Toropchenko hater, which is weird because I was the guy that loved Toropchenko from like the first time that I ever saw him. He is...
All right, man. Cool it over there.
Exactly the kind of player that I love to have on the fourth line.
Yeah.
Because he's a fourth liner. And there's nothing wrong with being a super valuable commodity on the fourth line. That's what Nathan Walker is. That's what Oscar Sundqvist has made a career of. He is a fourth line center. And Toropchenko is a fourth line winger. Jakub Vrana, I think by the end of this game, will be playing on the third line so long as he doesn't mess up somehow in a significant way defensively while being on the fourth line. But I think that does not get the best out of him. I don't think you're going to get the best out of Jakub Vrana by putting him on the fourth line.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that third line has scored one goal in their last 6 games, and it was Kapanen against Pittsburgh. You're going to switch that up. I think this is also just getting them back into the rotation and keeping what's familiar there, and then in-game you're going to see the adjustments take place.
Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we got to talk about Robert Thomas because he's developing into a legitimate Selke Trophy candidate, as we heard on the fast lane the other day. So we'll get into that coming up in about 10 minutes. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Ask Us Anything here on 101 ESPN.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. You guys give us any questions, sports or otherwise. We will answer them here on BK and Ferrario. But first, I got to get to this breaking news from Rich Cimini of ESPN.com. It's a massive story.
T-Bone breaking news?
Aaron Rodgers voted most inspirational Jet by his teammates. I mean, the story is unlike anything we've ever seen before. Gets hurt in week 1 on the field that is at the new stadium in which he's going to be playing. This Jets team is going to go to the Super Bowl, and instead he tears his Achilles and he returns by the end of the season, guys. He plays game action despite his team being out of play. Wait. I'm getting something from the studio. He did not, in fact, return to game action. Instead, he was never actually activated.
But whose fault was that?
Man, apparently the Jets. The Jets screwed him.
Frankly, I think they should have.
I'm happy to hear that his teammates found him to be such an inspiration. That's great.
They inspired them to play like, dog poo the entire season. I think they should have given it to Benny. Benny and the Jets.
What?
Did you feel good about that?
I felt awesome about it, mostly because Tanner was very confused.
No, I
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, guys, do you think Michael Penix Jr. will be better in the NFL than Caleb Williams? I do not, personally. I think Caleb Williams will be better.
I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to go to a better team, and I think that's going to make him look better than Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to go through a little bit of Bryce Young syndrome, depending on who he gets drafted by.
He really does not want to go to Chicago.
Or New England.
I think Caleb Williams will still be better, but I could see where it ends up being closer than a lot of people are expecting. But my thing with Penix is he feels like, because he's such a... He feels like he could end up being almost like Jameis Winston to me, where he can throw 40 touchdowns, but he may turn the ball over a lot because he's a gunslinger, I would put him. Caleb Williams feels like he could be like Kyler Murray, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Right? I would say probably a bad thing, but as we see now, Kyler Murray looks like he's going to be the franchise guy in Arizona.
From the 314, guys, what is Cody Schrader's NFL potential, and do you think there's a team specifically that would suit him best? I don't know about the team. It really depends. He's a good player when it comes to the zone running scheme, and you see more of that stuff from the guys that run the Kyle Shanahan offense. So L.A., I think the Rams would be an interesting fit for him. You could see it in New York. You could see it in San Francisco. He doesn't have the speed, though, and that's something that, like, Miami, who runs that Kyle Shanahan offense, really values. So I don't think he'll end up there. Maybe Houston. Houston would be an interesting spot. But what is his NFL potential? I think he's going to be a change of pace back. I don't think he's going to be a starter in the league. I think he's somebody that comes in and you hope to just latch onto a team and you end up getting an opportunity. If he could have Phillip Lindsay's NFL career, I think that would be a massive success for him. So
I think he should go to the Jets. They have the most inspirational player in the National Football League.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good pick by you.
I think that's the place to go.
I think you're probably right, though. I think Phillip Lindsay, you say that name, it's like perfect, like what you would hope that he would end up being, because I don't think he'll ever be a starting running back that ends up starting 16 games and plays like the role like a Kyron Williams.
Is he Chase Brown with Cincinnati?
Chase Brown's got some speed.
I think he's the starting running back next year.
Mixon?
I thought he could take the job.
Yeah,
I thought he could take the job from Mixon this year. Then he dealt with a bunch of hamstring issues. I don't know if he could get to. And look, I'm saying this, and Chase Brown hasn't started yet. I don't know if he'll get to that Chase Brown level, because Chase Brown's got legitimate explosiveness, which Schrader does not.
From the 618, guys, if you could vote anybody from 101 ESPN as the most inspirational person at the station, who would you vote? I'll give my answer first. I would go Tim McKernan. I am inspired by his ability to get unlimited paid vacation.
That's a really good one.
So my answer to this question is the most inspirational for me is Tim McKernan. If I was going with a backup, I would say Jamie Rivers, because he literally died on a table in a foreign country and came back to life. That's pretty inspirational.
That is pretty inspirational.
Those would be my top two.
I would go Jamie number one for that reason alone.
Mine's Anthony Stalter. That man's got 3 children and wakes up every damn day.
True.
And says, today it's going to go well.
And then goes, let's get nasty. God bless that man. He's 2 away from being Joey V.
Yeah. Cheaper by the dozen coming soon to a house near you. Or Stoltz.
I'm also inspired by that, because Stoltz, I'm probably going to be you within the next couple of years.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. From the 636, Guys, is BK the type that goes to the grocery store and doesn't return his shopping cart to the correct area?
You son of a, you didn't, that's not a text. You just brought that up because of what I had to go through yesterday.
I swear.
Oh my God, that really happened. I wonder if this is the lady that I saw at Aldi's yesterday or 2 days ago. I was at Aldi's again, which, you know, that's my spot that everything goes haywire with.
It's amazing how many horrible things, according to you, happen at Aldi.
It's just the parking lot. I love Aldi's grocery store. I mean, you talk about saving money. That's where it's at. But anyway, I get the girls in the car. I put all the groceries in the trunk, and I'm about, because, you know, at Aldi's, you got to return the cart to get your quarter back because jerks like BK leave it in the parking lot. So I'm walking it back, and there was a nice lady that was walking towards the store, and I'm like, oh, well, she probably needs a cart, so I was just going to give it to her. I said, ma'am, do you need this? And she goes, well, no, but I can take it for you.
What's the problem?
I'm still trying to figure out what
I felt like a jerk.
Here.
I made the lady take back my cart and return
asked you to do it.
But that's a jerk move by me. I should have said, no, I can do it myself. I just thought you needed the cart.
Rude.
No.
I don't know if anybody's in the wrong. That's what I don't understand.
I felt very awkward walking back to my car while this lady was pushing my cart, which she didn't audition for. She didn't ask to do that. I forced her into it.
All right, final thing here. This one is coming from
BK, yes, does leave his cart in the parking lot.
Guys, my most inspirational person at 101 ESPN is actually T-Bone, because he could be an Olympian, but he chooses to be here with us instead.
True.
He could be in a good relationship too, but chooses to be single.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming up in
God bless
15
that
minutes, we'll get to some NFL quick hitters, including the biggest games heading into this weekend, games that will determine the playoff race. We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. But next, Robert Thomas developing into a Selke Trophy candidate. The first person that I heard mention this was Jamie Rivers on the fast lane. Alex is going to add some great stats to that I'm sure he pulled off from somebody else coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care. When it comes to your HVAC system, personal customer service is the most important part. And I've been using Classic Air Care for now, I think about 10 years since I bought my house. And my parents have been using them for 30 years. So that goes to show you the customer service that they provide. And I can give you one of their Google reviews, one of their many Google reviews talking about how great they are. From the initial call, Mary writes, into fixing the problem, things went great. My furnace was cold when I woke up, and Sean got there quickly to get my home warm again. They don't wait around when you call if you've got a problem with your unit. If you got an old unit like I do, you know, you're not going to mess around with that. So you got to make sure you've got the maintenance that takes care of it. I'm on the maintenance program with Classic Air Care, so every 6 months I know that I am there in their mindset. And if you're purchasing an HVAC system, which is a scary purchase for everybody, know that they're going to take care of you. They're not going to do the car dealership route where they add more prices in and not tell you. Going to walk you through everything, and they've got financing options. So check them out. Find out why they have been a part of my family for 30 years. Classic Air Care, classicaircare.com.
Thomas into the middle to Buchnevich. He dropped it off to Kyrou, back to Thomas to the far wing. Parayko, score!
Wow, it's the top line that does it again for St. Louis. Boy, have they delivered. Good entry here by Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. They play a little pitch and catch, and then you're going to see Robert Thomas picks his head up, and he goes to the unmarked man, takes a great pass from Robert Thomas and goes far side on Thatcher Demko.
Kyrou tries to leave before Buchnevich has to reach back for it. It's the defenseman coming on. Perunovic to Thomas. He scores! What a goal by Robert Thomas. Top corner, stick side. 2-1, St. Louis.
Blues fans, let's hear it for number 18, Robert Thomas, on his first career selection to the NHL All-Star Game.
That's what it sounded like right here on 101 ESPN last night. Your home of the St. Louis Blues. Robert Thomas is officially the St. Louis Blues representative in this year's All-Star Game. Alex, it doesn't mean he's going to be the lone All-Star representative, but he's the first. Every team gets one. He is the Blues representative, and he is more than deserving of this honor. And it is really an honor. He's going back home. This year, the All-Star Game is being held in Toronto, so that's a pretty cool thing for he and his family. And Alex, he's on pace right now for 90 points this season, and it's not just a offensive-driven statistical season for him. This guy is playing some hard minutes for the Blues, going up against the top line on a night-in, night-out basis. I questioned last year if that was something that he was ready for. I didn't feel like it was there yet. This year, that's been completely different. Last night, he goes up against the top line for Vancouver, which has been one of the best lines in the NHL this year. Doesn't shut them down, but does a pretty darn good job of slowing them down, and that's all you can really ask for. When he is on the ice this season, Alex, I saw this earlier today from DeFranks in STLtoday.com. When Robert Thomas is on the ice at even strength, St. Louis is outscoring its opponents 39-23. That's a plus 16 differential. When he is not on the ice, so any other line is on the ice and Robert Thomas is on the bench, St. Louis has been outscored 71-26. That is a minus 26 goal differential. So this year, compared to when he's on versus off, there is a 41 goal difference in terms of your goal differential when Robert Thomas is on versus off of the ice. It's one of the biggest differentials for any forward in the NHL this year. And Alex, I know you brought this up a couple of days ago, as I know you heard it from Jamie Rivers prior to.
I swear to God, you just stop. I'm done.
Robert Thomas is not just an all-star. He might be working his way into the current and future Selke Trophy conversation as well.
Yeah, the hard part with all of this is, unfortunately, to be a Selke Trophy candidate, you're going to have to be a team that's in the playoffs, and that's going to hinge a lot on Robert Thomas. But so I went back through the last 6 seasons of Selke Trophy candidates at this point of the season. And if you look at his numbers in certain areas compared to the guys that won the Selke Trophy, he's putting up the exact same numbers that these guys are doing. So Patrice Bergeron, through 36 games played. So I did this prior to last night's game. Sure. Last night's game changes a little bit. Patrice Bergeron, who won it last year, 36 games played, he had 30 points, but at even strength goal differential, he was 19, which means he was on the ice 19. For 19 more even strength goals than against. So that was incredible for Bergeron. To put that into perspective, Thomas right now is at 16 or 15 and 13 prior to last night's game. Bergeron, the next year, he was on the 7 even strength goal differential. Barkov was 15. Sean Courtier with the Philadelphia Flyers in 2020, 12. Ryan O'Reilly in 2019, 6. This was the one that really surprised me. Anze Kopitar in 2018. Through 39 games at the same January 1st break, he had 40 points, right where Robert Thomas is at, a 13 even strength goal differential, exact same as Robert Thomas. And then I went further with the plus minuses, and I know it's a fickle stat for people, but I think when you're playing 20 or more minutes a night, which Robert Thomas, 3 of those 6 names that I just gave you, Thomas is averaging more ice time than those guys were at the midway point of this season. He was a plus 12. To put it into perspective, Bergeron was a plus 6, Barkov was a plus 12, Courtier was a plus 9, O'Reilly was a plus 6, and Anze Kopitar was a plus 13. So all of these guys, at least in the last 6 years, he is on the exact same pace. He scored more points than a couple of these players. His plus-minus is better than a couple of these players, and he's eating more ice time against the other team's top lines.
And that's where I wanted to get to. This is something else that Jeremy Rutherford wrote about earlier today. Thomas's line is going up against the best players in the NHL right now. And, again, you don't shut these lines down. That is impossible. But you can slow them down a bit. And a big part of that is by getting your own offensive opportunities, turning your defensive zone time into offensive zone time. And that's what Robert Thomas and his line has been really good about in the last few games. In 11 minutes against the McKinnon line, the Blues outchanced the McKinnon line.
They didn't have a shot on goal through 2 periods.
In 6.5 minutes of even strength time against the Canucks, the Blues outshot their line 6-4. Against the Pettersson line, the Blues ended up giving up just 2 scoring chances. That's the kind of stuff, man, that you look at and you're like, okay, yeah, this is real Selke Trophy candidate type of things. And it's a conversation that I did not anticipate us having with Robert Thomas coming into the season. I didn't know if he was going to be a number 1 center. I remember before the year, and you got mad at me for this, and it was fair now looking back on it. I was like, hey, you know, if you get through the end of this season and Thomas has not emerged as that number 1 center, I think we're going to be talking about, hey, should you go get Sebastian Aho? Should you be in the Elias Lindholm conversation? Is that the new top pair defensemen that we're going to be looking towards? We can go ahead and push all of those conversations off to the side now because Robert Thomas is here. Yep. It is no longer what is Robert Thomas going to be. It is what is he now. And I don't think he's going to get into the Selke Trophy conversation in a meaningful way nationally.
I think he'll get votes, but it's not going to be anything important.
Yeah, because the Blues aren't a great team. And because we have not seen him do this in the playoffs yet. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing, kind of similar to when we talk about the best players in Major League Baseball or aces in Major League Baseball. It doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. This is the conversation about Sonny Gray, really. It's about what did you do in the playoffs? Have you shown me the ability to get things done as the number 1 starter when your team's season is on the line in the postseason? If you can do that, that's an ace. If you can do what we're talking about with Robert Thomas, what he's done so far in the regular season, in the playoffs, that's a Selke Trophy candidate right there.
Yeah, well, and I remember 2 years ago we were talking when they were in that playoff round against Minnesota and then against Colorado, and we would talk about how defensive zone faceoffs after icings late in game, it would be O'Reilly taking those faceoffs. And we were like, man, at some point Thomas is going to have to take those, and do we feel comfortable with him taking those? Well, right now he's like sitting at 62, 63% in terms of career faceoff numbers. Last night he was 68% in the defensive zone in his faceoffs. Man. And, I mean, you're seeing the evolution of an entire player, to your point, that is showcasing his ability against the top guys in the National Hockey League. And face-off numbers, you know, the part that Joe mentioned last night with me on pregame when we were talking about this, which I agree with, is a lot of the times when you're talking those Selke trophies, you're also talking about, you know, blocked shots and getting in the way of those. And his numbers are never going to match that because O'Reilly was one of the best block shotters, which is not a phrase, but I'm going to make it one, in 2019. Thomas might not be that for this team, which is fine by me, but when you're talking about...
I don't want him doing that.
Yeah, because that's how you get injured. But when you're talking about in the last 9 games, only 3 of those 9 games, the top line has scored points, not on the power play.
Wow.
You're talking about one of the most impactful centermen in the National Hockey League. You're putting him in the same conversation as Anze Kopitar, as Barkov, as Patrice Bergeron when he was there with the Boston Bruins. The difference is what BK just mentioned. You're going to have to do it on a big stage. And if this is the year you get into the playoffs, and let's just say you lose the first round, but it goes 7 games, and you see Robert Thomas find ways to eliminate the other team's top line, if you're Doug Armstrong, you're thinking this was a win season for me.
Because these awards typically are catch-up, right? They catch up to what we saw a year ago because it takes a while for people to catch on to what's taking place. And that is why, like, I understand somebody on the sex line said, BK, you know these are regular season awards, right? Technically they are, but really they are catching up to what we saw the previous year. Because whatever you see in the playoffs, those are the national spotlight games. People will take that, remember it, and then apply it to what they're seeing in future seasons. So that would be the one kind of caveat that I would put there. Yes, they are for the regular season, but what people see in the playoffs has a significant impact on the way that they end up voting the following season. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, how much concern is there about the Cardinals' injuries that have taken place in the middle infield? I think it's something that we at least need to bring up. We'll get into that coming up here in just a little bit. But next, NFL Quick Hitters here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. It is a massive week. It is the final week of the NFL season, and this weekend we've got some big games, boys. On Saturday, we get the doubleheader with 2 AFC games with playoff implications. I know you guys are going to be standing, waiting on bated breath.
How many backup quarterbacks are playing in that one?
2. 3. As the Steelers take on the Baltimore Ravens with
The Baltimore Ravens.
Mason Rudolph taking on Tyler Huntley, with the Steelers potentially still in playoff contention, by the way. If they win this game, they are very much in play to make it to the AFC postseason. So that's the first game of the day. 3:30 kickoff for that one. And then the night game, the Texans traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts, a game in which C.J. Stroud will go up against Gardner Minshew, potentially with the division on the line, depending on what happens with the Jaguars the next day. Do you guys have a lean in either of these games? Steelers a 3-point favorite right now. Houston Texans a 1.5-point favorite.
I would go Steelers, because I think the Steelers will close out the season, especially if they have the opportunity with playoffs on the line and upsetting somebody else. That screams Mike Tomlin all the way. I have no lean in that Ravens-Texans game.
What's the
I'm sorry, yeah.
Colts?
Yeah, I have no lean in that Texans-Colts games. I don't, because C.J. Stroud gives you the advantage, but the Colts are playing for their lives right now.
I mean, both teams are. Both teams, if they lose, are done.
Yeah, I don't really have a good feel for the Texans-Colts game either, because I don't trust either team. Because I've seen the Colts play decent under Gardner Minshew, and then I've also seen games where I go, that's not the same team I just watched. And it's kind of the same for the Texans. I don't think they've been as great offensively. Look, Stroud has missed a game or two recently. They haven't looked as good since Tank Dell went down offensively. And defensively, I've never really trusted their defense, although Anderson's been playing pretty well of late. If I had to pick a side, I would go with the Texans. And then in the Steelers-Ravens game, I agree with Alex. I would say take the Steelers, because defensively, they've got a great defense. They're still playing for something, and this is Huntley's first game of the season. He's got to go up against that Pittsburgh defense.
The Ravens don't care.
Yeah.
The Ravens don't want to get hurt.
I think that the Steelers win that one, and I would even take the spread on that at -3.
Totally with you. I'm with you on both of those ones. I have the Steelers beating the Ravens, and then I've got the Texans beating the Colts. The other games with serious playoff implications: Jaguars on the road on Sunday at noon, taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars are a 3.5-point road favorite in this one. There was a question earlier today as to whether or not Trevor Lawrence is going to play. When asked about that, Doug Peterson said, "We're not sure yet. That's going to be a legit game time decision." Let's assume he does.
He's playing.
It's a win-or-go-home type of scenario for the Jaguars. They have been awful down the stretch. Do you guys have a significant lean in this one between the Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans? This is in Nashville.
I would take Tennessee and whatever the points are.
Wow.
The way I'm looking at this is Tennessee knows they're playing for upset and they can ruin another team's season. And if I'm a player under Mike Vrabel, who I know his job's probably on the line at the end of this season, I'm going to go out there and give everything I can for that rather than what Jacksonville's playing for. Because let's say Lawrence plays. He's not going to be 100%. Even Jacksonville players know that. I think they're a more depleted group than what Tennessee is going to be in that game. So I would take the Titans, and I'd take the points.
See, I like the Jaguars, but I don't even know if I would take the points at 3.5. I think the best bet in this one is the under at 41.5, because this is going to be a slugfest. Tennessee, is Levis even playing? I don't think he is, right?
I don't think so.
I think it's
Tannehill. So
which is another reason why, Tannehill's going to have some motivation.
Yeah, he's got to play for his future outside of Tennessee. But I don't know. I don't trust Jacksonville at all, but I don't think Tennessee's a very good team. I think Jacksonville will squeak out a win in this one. It's going to be very close, though.
I'm going Jacksonville as well, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be really close. Man, I don't like that Jaguars offense right now. Trevor Lawrence turned the ball over left and right when he's been healthy. They don't have I don't think Calvin Ridley is a number 1 receiver.
Agreed.
I think we have learned this season he's a number 2. He's a really nice number 2.
Way too inconsistent.
Christian Kirk was their number 1 pass catcher, and since he's gone down, that offense has not looked the same at all. Their defense has not been particularly good most of the season. A really nice pass rush, but other than that, they don't do much well on that side of the ball. So I am concerned about them going into this one. I think it ends up being relatively low scoring. Jaguars end up winning it like 20-13, but it is an ugly game.
And is Kirk playing? I was going to say, I think he's out. So
yeah, he's been out for a while. So That's why I don't like their offense. It just does not look the same since he's gone out. The other big one, guys, it's Sunday night. Bills at the Dolphins.
Oof.
This is really the headliner.
Our guy Donnie Fandango, by the way, is going through it right now.
Is he?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I feel like I'm in a great spot if I'm the Bills.
He's not feeling good.
Oh, dude, I think this is the perfect, ideal spot for the Buffalo. The Dolphins are so unbelievably banged up. I think this is going to be a bit unfair where people say this is the same old Dolphins, same thing that happened a year ago, when it's completely different. Last year, they collapsed, and every ounce of criticism that was flung in their direction was deserved. This year, Raheem Mostert is hurt. Tyreek Hill is not at 100%. Jalen Waddle is out with a high ankle sprain. They are also without one of their top corners in Xavier Howard, both of their top pass rushers defensively. Name me a team that can have 6 of their top 10 or so players out at this point of the year, and you'd be like, oh, I feel great about them. There's not a single one in the league that you can say that about. So I don't feel good about the Dolphins at all. Bills are a 2.5-point road favorite in this one, which tells you Vegas agrees. This is a big-time favorite in favor of the Bills. If they were at home, Vegas is telling you to be like 9 points in favor of them. I think they win this one by 10+.
Yeah, and I agree that it shouldn't be viewed as same old Dolphins collapsing. But I would say, like, they probably were a fraud the whole time. Yeah. And I understand that they're not healthy now. But if they do get healthy for the playoffs, because I have no faith in them winning in the first round. Because I just looked at their schedule to just reaffirm my belief. Here are the top teams they've played this year. At Buffalo, got killed 48-20. At Philadelphia, lost 31-17. Kansas City, who I don't even think is a real threat in the AFC, lost to them 21-14 in Germany. Then they went to Dallas is their best win on their schedule, 22-20 win at home. Dallas had been going through a bit of a rut at that point as well. Last week at Baltimore, got creamed 56-19.
Yeah.
They're a fraud. Every win on their schedule is against a bad football team. Yeah, right. So though I agree they shouldn't be viewed as a collapse because they deal with the injuries, I think they've just been a fraud this whole time, and we fell for the bait.
Yeah. So if we end up being correct and we see the Bills, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Jaguars win this weekend, what that would mean is we would then end up with Cleveland at Jacksonville as your first-round matchup between the 4 and the 5
well, that's
seed.
a simple Cleveland win.
Yes.
Miami at Kansas City as the 3-6 seed.
Crap on crap. I'd probably say Miami.
The Texans in Buffalo with the Bills as the number 2 seed, and the Ravens as the number 1 seed. They are already locked into that capacity.
That would be fun.
That'd be a fun postseason.
I feel like I'm going to win all of my bets in that one, though.
You got the Bills, the
Dolphins.
You take the Dolphins?
I think I would take the Dolphins. Is that going to be in Kansas City?
Yeah, I would not take the Dolphins.
I would not take the Dolphins.
I would take the Dolphins, but what the hell is Kansas City going to do?
I think I would have a heavy favorite for the Browns, the Chiefs, and the Bills in that first round. A heavy favorite.
What? But I could see
I think Miami could at least do that. Offensively, I could see Tyreek putting on a show.
Buffalo feels like the team, though, that is the 2. Buffalo's the team that everybody's all in on them. You know, they just beat Miami. They're the 2. They're taking on C.J. Stroud and the Texans. They don't have Tank Dell. And then C.J. Stroud throws for 480 yards, 4 touchdowns, and upsets them.
No, they lose that game because Josh Allen throws a pick in the final drive down the field.
A reminder, and this is probably why Donnie is so fearful.
He's got Josh Allen.
Everything we just said happens.
No, they run Latavius Murray like a number 1 running back.
Instead, the Dolphins beat the Bills this weekend. So the Steelers, the Texans, and the Jaguars win. But the Dolphins win head-to-head against the Bills.
Yeah, the Bills are out of it.
Bills don't just miss out on the 2 seed. They are out of the playoffs. Yeah. So everything we think can happen in terms of the non-Bills game, all very realistic. We think it's likely to happen. Bills got to take care of business this weekend, dude. And I'm not just saying that for their own sake to get like the 2 seed. I'm saying that to get into the play. It's crazy that they could be the 2 seed or the 8 seed by the end of this week.
And the crappy part with that is if you're Buffalo, all you got to do is sit and watch all of those teams win. That forces you to have to beat Miami.
No
that
pressure.
Sucks.
I hope that happens, by the way. The stakes on Sunday Night Football, if we see the Steelers, the Texans, and the Jaguars all win,
poor Al Michaels.
Some
just
tight
give him
cheeks
that
up
game.
there in Buffalo. Some tight cheeks.
Wasn't it last year where there was I think the end of season game was the Packers, the Lions.
Yeah.
If everything went right, that game was for a playoff spot. and then it lost its juice because the Lions got eliminated.
The Lions
because
still got it.
And then they beat Green Bay,
It was
which was
amazing.
fantastic.
It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, but that's a Dan Campbell-led team, and I'm on board with that.
A lot of juice going into that one. Big weekend in the NFL. We'll continue previewing it a little bit further coming up at 1:45.
A lot of juice.
Discuss the NFC South battle. There's three teams that can win that division.
Nobody cares.
Do you care?
Yeah.
Oh, do you? You think one of those three teams are going to do anything?
No, but I want to see who gets in.
Who cares?
I want to see which crap show gets to host a freaking playoff game.
Only reason I care is because I'm playing a whole lot of playoff fantasy stuff, and the one that ends up getting in is more meaningful for me when it comes to who I get to draft.
And you're with a lot of
And
people.
then BK's going to win and tell us that he was going to split the money with us and then not. So, like, I know how that rodeo goes.
I hope I get to pay off something of significance this year. I can pay for my basement this time around instead of my wedding. With
Here,
playoff
Alex, look, we
basketball.
won. Oh, wait, I'm keeping it all.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're diving into the junk drawer. Maybe Alex can discuss further all of the problems that he has with the way that I conduct myself. But coming up next, how much concern is there about the Cardinals' injuries in the middle infield? Is it something that's going to have a lasting impact on the way that they look at their shortstop position? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Robert Thomas last night was named an All-Star for the first time in his career. He went on to score the game-winning goal as the Blues beat the Canucks, the best team in the Pacific Division, 2-1 last night. They improved to 19-17 and 1 on the season, just 2 points behind Seattle for that final wildcard spot in the Western Conference. Blues will be back tomorrow as they head to Carolina to take on the Hurricanes. Pregame will be at 6 o'clock, puck drop at 7 here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. Then over at the World Juniors, Czechia earlier today won bronze. Jakub Stanchel had a goal and an assist. Aleksanteri Kaskamäki for Finland had 2 assists as well. Going on right now, USA and Sweden for the gold medal. No score in that one. Sweden with Otto Stenberg and Theo Lindstein, 2 Blues prospects. Jimmy Snuggerud for the U.S. I'm Grant France. This SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating, Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, Grant France is doing a fantastic job for us back in the studio today. We're broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. So, Alex, there was a report yesterday that Tommy Edman had off-season surgery. We did not know about this, despite there being multiple reporters that asked specifically from the end of the season until where we are today, hey, is there any update on any health statuses that we were previously unaware of?
There's no evidence of that.
And the Cardinals at every turn said, no, everything's good, everything's progressing as expected. There is apparently a change to that. There's an amendment. Tommy Edman did have off-season surgery on his wrist. Alex, he joins Brendan Donovan, who had surgery on his elbow at the trade deadline, and Nolan Gorman, who has been dealing with his nagging back injury for 4 years now.
Oh, good.
As middle infielders / center fielders in the case of Tommy Edman, who are at least entering spring training with injury question marks at a minimum. What's your level of concern about those three when it comes to their injury status?
I mean, if I had to rank the concern, it would be Gorman as number 1 and probably Edman 2, Donovan 3. But, I mean, if it was any other team, my concern would probably be like a 2 or a 3 because I'm like, cool, like, yeah, it's off-season stuff, fine. But the fact that the Cardinals didn't say anything about it and then now are reporting it, and there's a history of Cardinals when it comes to injuries, be like, no, we're good. It's not that big of a deal. And then, oh, wait, he's not available until June.
They would never do that with Dylan Carlson and an ankle injury that they said wasn't that big of a deal, and then he ends up getting potentially surgery for it. They would never do
Alex Reyes, Jack Flaherty. I keep going if you guys want to.
I always love the classic pitch one. It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's just an elbow thing. He's just getting it looked at. Miles Michaelis.
Yeah, remember the Michaelis one? Oh, dude, that was the worst.
Michaelis was a week and then a month and then 2 months. And then like, oh, yeah, he's probably shut down for the rest of the year. So because it's the Cardinals.
He got a PRP injection. We're going to put off the surgery. That's not necessary. 3 months later.
Because
he's going to get the surgery.
Because it's the Cardinals and the fact that like, oh, no. There are no surgeries or injuries. We're fine. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, yeah, he's probably going to be out for a little bit. Yeah, I would say my concern level is pushing towards a 7 or an 8.
Yeah, so I would say Gorman's definitely the number 1 of these 3. I would actually put Donovan last because I think he'll be able to recover that fine. And it's not in the wrist area or in kind of the lower leg and the foot, which is something that will kind of throw off that connective chain for hitters. So I'm not really concerned about Brendan Donovan at all. And I would slow play him in a throwing program just to make sure that he fully does recover. Gorman's definitely number 1 for me. And it's not so much that I think it's an injury that can like sap the power from his bat because I think he did a really good job of managing it this year. The problem for me is, okay, but when I say managing it, can he get to more than 119 games? Can he play like 130, 140 games while dealing with this back injury? Because he could definitely manage his way through this and figure a way to, and I know Mo had mentioned that, and I think it was John Denton's piece about being able to manage through these back pains through a whole 162-game season. But if he can't play more than just 120 games a year, I don't know if he'll ever get to that 40 home run potential that has me drooling over here about not even trading him for a Dylan Cease or any starter on the market. So that's why he would be number 1 for me. I think Tommy Edman's number 2. And the biggest thing for me for Tommy Edman is will it take away some of that power in his bat? And look, he doesn't slug a ton like Nolan Gorman, but he does hit decently well for doubles and hit decently well on the right side of the plate. And once you start dealing with the wrist, that's where it becomes a little bit concerning for me. But I said this yesterday, because he hits 8th in the lineup, 9th in the lineup, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it shouldn't affect his defense.
So 2 of those 3 players are significant left-handed bats that the Cardinals have in their lineup. You can add more than just those 2, though. Lars Nootbaar, big-time left-handed bat that the Cardinals are expecting significant contributions from offensively in 2024. And then we'll see what happens with Alec Burleson between now and the start of the season. He's another guy that the Cardinals internally are really high on. Earlier today, Derek Gould was on the morning show, and I thought he made a really salient point about the importance of left-handed bats in the postseason specifically, and how the Cardinals factor into that heading into 2024. I'll allow him to go ahead and tell you about this. Grant, if you don't mind, this is Derek Gould on the Cardinals' left-handed bats.
I cannot stress enough the need for left-handed presence in today's game. It's just, when you go from the regular season to the playoffs, type of relievers that teams throw at you in October just absolutely neutralize your right-handed bats. Like the average OPS during a season compared to the average OPS for right-handed bats in October, it drops significantly. But left-handed bats stay the same. Look who's changing games. It's Corey Seager. It's Bryce Harper. It's Kyle Schwarber. And the Cardinals have that sprinkled into their lineup, and that's going to be so valuable to them if they can keep those 3 guys healthy and in the lineup and consistently performing.
Alex, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the Cardinals' left-handed bats? Because I'll just give you a quick stat on what he's talking about there, because what he's saying is true. Left-handed bats flat out perform better in the postseason than right-handed hitters. Last year, in terms of OPS plus, just to make this easy, all-encompassing, it's not the perfect statistic, but I think it's representative of offensive production. OPS plus by left-handed bats, by the way, remember this is on a scale of 100, where 100 is exactly league average, but offense is suppressed in the postseason, so anything above 100 is really good for a playoff hitter. Left-handed bats in the postseason last year had a 107 OPS plus. Right-handed bats, 13 points worse at a 94. The year prior, 99 for lefties, 77 for righties. The year before that, 108 for lefties, 84 for righties. The year before that, it was roughly equal, actually a little better, but a reminder, this is the 2020 postseason. 95 for left-handed hitters and 102 for right-handed hitters. Alex, when you think about the importance of the left-handed hitters in a lineup in the postseason and how the Cardinals play into that, does it give you optimism that maybe the Cardinals can offset their lack of a number 1 starter other than Sonny Gray, lack of a front-end starter other than Sonny, by their ability to hit with their left-handed bats in the lineup?
No. It doesn't, because I don't think your team is good enough to even get to a postseason position and utilize these left-handed bats, because the way you're playing right now, we're talking about a 3-game wild card series maybe. And to win those, as much as we could talk about having all these great left-handed bats, and you got Gorman's potential 40 home runs, and you got Nootbaar and Donovan, who are you throwing out there in those games? Because you're going to have to hope that those guys go on a Randy Arozarena playoff-esque run, because your pitching staff can't keep you in games. I don't think your team is talented enough. You just listed Corey Seager. You listed Kyle Schwarber. You listed these left-handed bats. Also go look at their pitching staffs. Also go look at who they're throwing out there in those games that allow Schwarber and Seager and these left-handed bats to go out there and have success. You know why they're such big figures? Because those games are 0-0 going into the 7th inning, and then Kyle Schwarber steps to the plate and hits a bomb. In these games, with the exception of Sonny Gray, you're down 5-0 maybe by the 3rd inning.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's impactful.
I agree with what Alex said. I think the lack of legitimate arms at the front end of the rotation is the thing that can hold the Cardinals back. Now, I would say they only have one legitimate impact left-handed bat, and that is Nolan Gorman if he is healthy, because all those names that Derek Gould had mentioned.
And to be, those are the only ones that have done it. He's just mentioning the ones that we think of immediately. Brandon Marsh has been 25% above league average offensively in the postseason over the last few seasons. Eddie Rosario, 35% above league average offensively. Evan Carter, 55% above league average offensively. And you can continue from there. It's all of these guys from the left side. Verdugo, Bellinger, Grisham, Rizzo, Matt Olson, Stephen Kwan, Max Muncy, Christian Yelich. Again, I can continue from there. Those are just all of the guys that have at least 20 at-bats or more in the postseason over the past few seasons. If you're a lefty hitter and you get more than 20 at-bats, odds are you're going to be an above-average hitter, because you've got to be in the postseason as a left-handed hitter in the lineup to get a bunch of at-bats. And also because there's so many power pitchers from the right side that you just have a significant platoon advantage against.
And what I was getting at as a difference maker is we talked about it in the postseason this year, is the guy that with one swing can give you the lead. And Gorman's the only guy, in my opinion, in this line that can do it. Nootbaar and Donovan, sure, they could be some of those guys that you just named off, where they can get hot, they can get on base and help create some offense. But the slugging is the number one thing that you're looking for from the left side once you get to October. And that's why I've always been hesitant to trade a Nolan Gorman. That's why I've always said I would try to include a package with a Donovan or a Nootbaar rather than Nolan Gorman. But I think Alex is 100% right. They just do not have the top-end pitching to really keep themselves, I think, in a series once you get to October because of that. Because Sonny Gray, yeah, he could probably go up against the number one. You probably aren't going to be favored in that game. Like, nobody's probably going to take Sonny Gray over Yamamoto or whoever it is that throws for the Dodgers, over Strider, who's going to be pitching for Atlanta, over Wheeler, who's going to be pitching for Philadelphia. And then you're really not going to be favored once you go Michaelis versus name the twos on those teams. Yeah. That's their biggest issue.
And here's the thing, too. Like, I look at all those left-handed names that Gould mentioned of Gorman and Nootbaar and Donovan. I think you're still a good-looking team if you trade one of those guys for a better starting pitcher.
See, I would kind of view it the way that T-Bone does, which is, like, you need both. Because, like, when I look at Atlanta, so they've got Olson, they've got Michael Harris. They also just traded for Chris Sale and have Max Fried and Spencer Strider. So they've got the left-handed bats and they've got the front-end starting pitching. You look at Philadelphia. They've got Wheeler and Nola at the front end of their rotation, and they have Schwarber and Harper as their big-time bats from the left side. You look at the Dodgers, if you want to go there. They've got left-handed bats in their lineup, and also they have this monster threesome at the front end of their rotation. Like, any of these teams that we want to look at, they have the lefties and they have the starters in terms of the actual contenders in the National League. So I think you need these guys. I think you need Gorman. I think you need Donovan. You need Nootbaar. And you need the starter. Trying to be able to find a way to get both, not exactly an easy thing for the Cardinals, given what they're willing to spend this offseason. I thought they would change their ways. They haven't. Coming up next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So there are certain drinks, T-Bone, Alex, that are just for specific situations. For example, a Bloody Mary. When you think Bloody Mary, you think what?
After a hangover.
And what time of the day?
Golfing.
Breakfast.
Morning,
I
right?
think golfing.
Really?
That's a good drink when you just hit the golf course for a 9 a.m. tee.
Okay, but morning, right?
Yeah, morning, but it's when you're
time
teeing
to
off.
drink a Bloody Mary is during the morning.
I hate Bloody Marys, by the way.
There's a CNN article today on why Bloody Marys are only consumed in the morning. What else happens in your life that is that way? And why do we have these rules?
Well, I'm a miserable you-know-what in the morning, so maybe alcohol will make it better.
That's fair. Is there anything else that you are like, I will only have this at this time?
Oh, yeah, breakfast food.
That's
I
me
refuse
too.
to eat
Yeah.
breakfast food anywhere else. My wife loves breakfast food for dinner. I refuse to have it.
I think eggs are a universally great, like, I need a quick, cheap, easy meal.
Different types of
At
eggs,
any
though.
time.
I will not eat scrambled eggs in the evening. I'll eat a hard-boiled egg in the evening. I'll put that on my
What about
salad.
fried egg?
Nope. Oh, unless I'm putting it on a burger. But scrambled eggs?
Like, not as a meal. The star
it's got to
of the
be a
show.
part of something. It's the star of the show for breakfast. That's it. I won't have chicken and waffles because I think that's stupid.
No,
What?
Chicken?
I agree.
I think it's stupid. I don't mix and match my breakfast and dinner food.
You won't have chicken and
Nope.
waffle? Oh,
I think that's
the
stupid.
single greatest brunch food in the history of brunch, and you're saying,
Yeah, see, I don't
no,
do
sir.
brunch. I don't do brunch. Brunch is
Not a
trash.
fan.
What?
Yeah,
Not-
brunch is trash.
I've never felt more connected.
Make up your
with
damn
Ferrario.
mind.
Exactly.
Make up your damn
Exactly.
mind. I'm
That
not
is
eating
100%
Linner.
true.
Do you eat Linner? Although I do eat Linner on
better
Blues
or
games.
worse about this take?
Yes.
Based upon his
Yeah,
response.
no, I don't feel good about it. I'd appreciate you not to be a part of it, T-Bone. Just let this be my own thing.
No, we got to come on, man. You
This
and me
is-
together.
This is stupid. Like, you wake up in the morning, like, I deal with this with my daughters because they don't want to eat breakfast. They want to eat breakfast at, like, 10 a.m. But then I'm like, no, lunchtime's very soon.
McDonald's taught us breakfast ends at 11 o'clock.
Big Daddy taught us. Can somebody get the kid a Happy Meal? Yeah, no, I think brunch is trash. I think anybody that likes it is a joke.
I didn't realize that I worked with such curmudgeons on a day-to-day
It's not
basis.
curmudgeons. It's smart, intellectual food etiquette.
BK,
There's
if-
breakfast,
if it-
there's lunch. Get it, Grant.
If it makes you feel better, I'm on your side, BK.
Oh, no. Turn your damn mic off,
Yeah,
Grant.
because
Mike
we
off.
are on the winning side of history.
No,
No.
you're not on
History
the winning
will
side of history.
remember us as
Brunch has never been a thing. Like, back in the early 1800s, they weren't having brunch.
Exactly.
They were eating breakfast and they were eating dinner.
Granted-
Maybe if they could kill it.
Granted, they only had one main course, and that was bread.
Yeah, but they weren't having brunch. Brunch was this fancy thing we created because we're like, oh, what if we have this fancy meal? Brunch was created by lazy people that don't wake up early enough for breakfast.
Cook. Yes. God.
Get the hell out of here.
From the 314, guys, a mint julep is exclusively consumed
even-
during the Kentucky Derby.
I don't even know what a mint
T-Bone had one of
julep
those.
is.
I did?
Yeah, remember there was somebody
Oh,
that
yeah, you
packaged
passed
you
out.
a mint julep package with,
Oh, yeah.
with some whiskey
Yeah.
during the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, I didn't
T-Bone
have
went
mine.
home, drank the
Yeah.
entire fifth of whiskey, and passed out on his couch.
Yeah, and did not watch a Kentucky Derby.
What a life you live, my man.
No, you don't got to watch this.
Well, if you missed the Kentucky Derby, you can watch it in 90 seconds on Twitter, like the moment it
There you go.
finishes.
Other things that would fit into this criteria include the terrible food that exists for Thanksgiving. Like, you only eat that during Thanksgiving time.
I mean, I'm not going to deny that because I don't like turkey either, but there are so many other Thanksgiving meals.
No, it's
that,
turkey.
That could be much better.
It's turkey and pumpkin pie. That has to
Seltzers,
be on there.
green
seltzers
bean
are
casserole.
exclusive to summer.
Yeah.
No.
You only
Summer
drink
shandy.
seltzers during summer.
You are incorrect, sir.
Heavy stouts are to be consumed
Disgusting
at this
and
time
never
of the
drink.
year. There's certain things that, depending upon the weather, you don't eat an apple pie in mid-July.
Are you kidding me? I have
caramel
apple pie in October.
Yeah.
And then I have it in July. Yeah.
I would not eat a caramel apple pie.
I love me some apple pie. What the hell's wrong with apple pie? I don't understand you guys. You're all weird.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, Alex is 100% correct. Brunch is for rich a-holes that sleep too late. That's the only
You know what
reason
brunch
it's
is?
ever created.
Brunch is for people that go to their golf, what's that called? The clubhouses that have the memberships at golf courses. That's what brunch is for.
So it's for Alex?
No, I am not connected or a member at a golf course. I just pay to go golf.
You're insane.
Yeah. What are those called? Somebody can help me out on the Air Comfort Service text line. The people that have memberships at golf courses.
The wealthy.
The wealthy. Absolutely the wealthy.
I call them the people that I aspire to be.
But that's what it is. They're like, oh, let's go have brunch tomorrow. No, I'll wake up at 8 a.m. and eat my damn breakfast, and then I'll have my damn lunch, and then I'll have my damn dinner.
Somebody on the text line said, Alex, I just lost all respect for your sports perspective.
That has nothing to do with sports.
Breakfast food can be consumed at any time. Somebody else said cold pizza for breakfast. I'm sorry, man. I've just never gotten into it.
Katie likes that.
I don't shame anybody for what they eat, when they eat it, and how they eat it.
Oh, I do.
But cold pizza is definitely not for me, man.
But see, the thing with cold pizza is it's got to be the right pizza. Because, like, you're not eating like a thick crust pizza cold. You're eating
Country Club. Is that what you're
Country Club. Thank you. Why couldn't I come up with that damn
What
name?
you were looking for.
I couldn't come up with it. But like my wife, she loves Pasta House pizza in the morning.
I can't.
And
do
that's
any
the good
pizza
time. It's got to be the right cheese to do breakfast or pizza in the morning.
Provel?
I
think Pasta House uses Provel. I'm pretty sure it is.
I can't do cold pizza. I'm just.
I do cold pizza at dinner time. That cold pizza is awesome.
No, you know what? We are separated.
Coming up in about 15
Now, if you eat
minutes
it for
or so,
brunch,
we'll play a game of One's Gotta Go. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 different options. Maybe it's 4 different brunch options. We'll tell you which one's gotta go. But coming up next, Alex just cooked a little bit during that segment. He's going to cook a little more in the next one because he's ready to take a victory lap on Colton Parayko. He'll tell you why next here on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario, noted Colton Parayko believer. I'm Brandon Kiley. That's Tanner Hendrickson. You've got
Believe
BK
it or not.
here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get to One's Gotta Go, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 options, we'll tell you which one's got to go. But Alex, right now, we got to talk a little bit about your boy Colton Parayko, because it is time for you to take a victory lap. He has been outstanding this season for the St. Louis Blues, and it's not just his defensive prowess, which has been up and down at times, but we had a pretty good idea. Hey, this guy can be a solid defensive-minded defenseman if needed. It's the goal-scoring ability that has taken me by surprise. And yesterday after the game, Jordan Bennington was asked about what he has seen from Parayko this season, and he basically talked about him the way that you have for the last 5 years.
He just looks in tune all over the ice, and he looks calm with the puck and making smart plays. And, you know, he's a veteran in this league. So, you know, it's nice to see him actually putting some of those shots home and being a little more offensive, too, because you know he has that in his bag, right? So we're all happy for him.
You know, it's nice to see that from him, but more importantly, it's nice to get me my due credit that I deserve. You know, BK's over here talking about how he hears it on other shows. It's nice to get the credit that I deserve of the Colton Parayko enthusiast. Let's break this discussion up into 2 parts, if you don't mind. Defensively, Colton Parayko last season at this mark was a minus 16. Minus 16, ladies and gentlemen. And if I just get my calculations correct on this one, so far through 37 games played for Colton Parayko, that's right. There's not a minus next to his name. It's just +0.
I'd say there's not a plus either, but
well, technically it's a plus. You can't go minus 0.
You can't be +0 either.
0 is the absence of a number.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a minus.
Like, why? It's the absence of.
No, that's not true, because in a game, 0-0 is the score. You can't say there's no score.
It's scoreless.
There is a score. It's 0-0. Anyway, let's move past this. You guys are stupid.
I'll give you a plus. Sure.
You guys are stupid. He's averaging around like 23 minutes a night, which is top 20 in the NHL. But here's the part that I believe is why he deserves more credit as a top defenseman. Even strength time on ice, he's averaging 20 minutes and 51 seconds, so nearly 21 minutes. The guys that are in that same conversation as him, Rasmus Dahlin with the Buffalo Sabres, Miro Heiskanen with the Dallas Stars, Morgan Riley with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Noah Dobson with the New York Islanders. All considered top defensemen in the National Hockey League. Defensively, that's that side of it. He plays every element of the game. Penalty kill. Hopefully you'll start to see more power play and even strength. But the offensive side, like Jordan Bennington said, is the part that I think he's underrated, because he's not Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes. He's not going to put up 20 goals or 75 points, but he's shooting the puck more. Just like we talk about Robert Thomas, he's putting more pucks on net. He's not afraid to let it go. 7 goals so far this season, which Grant Francis had this nugget last night. He's on pace for 15 goals. His career high so far is 10. Last season, there were only 9 NHL defensemen with 15 or more goals in the National Hockey League. He's got 3 game-winning goals, which is tied for most in the National Hockey League amongst defensemen, and all of his goals have come at even strength. That is
only Quinn Hughes and Jake Wallman have more even strength goals this year among NHL defensemen.
So, and this is why Curbs has been clamoring for it. I've been clamoring for it. Put him on the damn power play, because now we're talking about him playing more time on ice. We're talking getting close to 25, 26 minutes a night, which Curbs had the nugget. It was like a week ago, to where he plays 26 or more minutes. They're like 19-4 when he's on the ice. Everything around Colton Parayko's game showcases a number 1 defenseman. The back problems where the back problems. Now you're starting to get more into the conversation of a healthy Colton Parayko, and just like that Matt DeFrank stat on the difference when Thomas is on the ice versus not on the ice, I could say the exact same thing about Colton Parayko, which tells you he's a number 1 defenseman for $6.5 million.
He's been really good this season, man. Is he an elite guy? Is he what Petrangelo was when he was here? No, but I think sometimes we're trying to hold him to a standard that is unfair to him.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like when Harrison Bader was here, right? Harrison Bader was never expected to be this offensive superpower. He was expected to be a Gold Glove defender that added a little bit offensively, but he needed to be more because the Cardinals lineup was deficient around him, and therefore people expected more out of him than what he was capable of being. The same thing is true this year of Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn should not be expected to be a guy that goes out there and has a 700-plus OPS this year. He's going to be a potential Gold Glove defender at shortstop, and anything you get above that is gravy, right? That's what Yadier Molina was early in his career. Every time that he gets a hit, That's a bonus for you based on what he was able to do defensively behind the plate. That's Colton Parayko. Just be really good defensively, man. And the nice thing about what he's doing for you this season is he is contributing offensively, and they need it. Because what they are lacking right now is any of that secondary scoring from their bottom 9 forwards. So he is essentially making up for some of the lack of scoring that you're getting for your forwards. That was necessary. And him now being an option on that power play unit, I'm glad that they decided to go with that. I'll be curious to see what it looks like and curious to see how long he sticks with that unit. But while Justin Falk is out, he is more than deserving of the opportunity. And Alex, I'm glad that you get this opportunity to take your victory lap.
You all are welcome.
The other thing that I wanted to get to here really quickly, after watching Scott Perunovich last night, I don't know how you do this, because I do agree with Jamie when Jamie said on the fast lane the other day, Scott Perunovich should not be playing top pairing defenseman minutes right now. He will be exposed because defensively he's still a liability at this point in his career. That's not a shot against Perunovich. It's where he's at right now. He's very young. He still needs some seasoning, just like Robert Thomas needed seasoning as a number 1 center. But Scott Perunovich needs to play with your top players more often, because last night you saw what he can do. His hockey IQ, his hockey sense is similar to Robert Thomas. And I used to say this about Thomas, where you needed him to be on the ice with players that viewed the game the way that he does. Putting him out there with a grinder like Josh Levo, it's a waste of his skill. Putting him out there with a grinder like, I'm trying to think of another one. Like if Sonny was a forward that was playing on the wing.
Even a Toropchenko.
Yeah, it doesn't get the most out of what Robert Thomas can bring to you. Kyrou, Buchnevich, those guys see the game the way that Robert Thomas does, and so you're getting more out of him. I think Perunovich is that way. Alex, I looked this up last night. Prior to yesterday, Scott Perunovich at 5-on-5, when he was on the ice with Robert Thomas, the Blues were out shooting their opponents 40-17. When Scott Perunovich was on the ice and Robert Thomas was not on the ice, the Blues were outshot 105-96. So they had been outshot by 9 when he was on the ice without Thomas. They were out shooting their opponents by 23, more than doubling up the opponents when those two were on the ice together at 5-on-5. Now, a caveat here. Those guys are going to be on the ice more often when you're down late in a game and you're trying to come back. So I want to put that out there as a situation that could lead to some of these numbers being a bit skewed. But they are also representative of the type of players that these two guys are. And right now, because you have him in your third pairing defensively with Marco Scandella, most of the time that he is on the ice with either the shin line or the fourth line. Those are the opportunities that he's getting. In fact, last night, he wasn't even supposed to be on the ice with Robert Thomas when he made that pass that led to the goal. He was getting ready to go off for a line change because Scandella had just gone off. It's why he was on the ice right there with Torrey Krug. So I would like to see them finding unique opportunities for him to be out there with Thomas, Kyrou, and Buchnevich, because he is somebody that can continue to get the most out of those players. I don't know how you do it. I'm not hockey smart enough to be able to figure that part out, but I think that's something that Bannister is going to have to figure out in the coming days and weeks, because Perunovich can continue to make Thomas, Kyrou, and Buchnevich the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, to make it happen, you play him in your top 4. And I know, and it's not just Jamie that views it that way. There are a lot of people that view it as he's a liability and you don't want to get him exposed. And I can't deny that, but at some point you're going to have to find out if he can play with those types of players. And I mean, not to take any, like, that's the part that's frustrating for me. Like, I understand what they're doing because you do want to make sure confidence is there, and Daniel Tkachuk talked about it earlier today. But on the other hand, like, at some point you got to stop babying them. At some point you got to look at Scott Perunovich and say, like, hey, we think you've got this skill set. Let's put you out there. Because, guys, Colton Parayko has played with Nico Mikkola. He's played with Jake Wallman, with Vince Dunn. Like, he's been on the ice where it's been a quote-unquote defensive liability. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And even if he's not playing with Colton Parayko, you know, when Justin Falk is healthy, put him in your top 4. Put him in your top 4 so you have a group that is your shutdown defensive pair and a group that's your offensive zone time defensive pair. That's how you get him out there more.
I was thinking about this last night, and I think it'd be really hard to do potentially. But is there any scenario where it would make sense to put him with Krug if you're getting offensive zone start opportunities? Can you do that? Because he does apparently like to play on his offhand. He likes to play on the right side.
You can, but the
Krug
problem
plays
is
on the left side.
As soon as you exit it out of the offensive zone, you're going to have one of them jump off the ice and get another one on.
I mean, is it that big of a liability?
It's not.
And I'm not saying it's not. I'm just asking because it's like you right now have, like, if you don't want to play him with Parayko and you don't want to put him with Krug, you cannot put him in the top four. Those are the only opportunities that currently exist there.
Here's the tough part with that. One, you got to be really crisp with your line changes, and we've seen that can be a problem for the Blues in the past because if not, you're getting a breakaway or you're getting too many men on the ice. The also issue with that is if you can't keep the puck alive in the offensive zone, if you lose that faceoff or if it's a one-and-done shot, you're putting your team in a tough spot because that one-and-done shot, let's say it misses the net and it rims around the board, well, now you've got both Krug and Perunovic rushing back, and the other team can get their line fresh on the ice while they're transitioning.
It's super risky.
And get zone time.
It's definitely a risk, and I don't know that the risk is worth the potential reward.
That's why I play him with Parayko.
It's the only way you can make it work.
Parayko is such a good defenseman in terms of killing plays and eliminating odd man rushes or scoring chances. And this is the part, again, that is frustrating because we're acting like he's just a defensive liability. Sure, if you get hemmed in your zone for 2 minutes, yeah, it's not the area once Scott Perunovic there. But don't get hemmed in the zone for 2 minutes. And you know how you avoid that? You have puck movers on the ice. And Scott Perunovic is so good with that outlet pass. And Parayko is so good at when the puck's on his stick, he skates straight up the middle of the ice. Now you're not talking about being a defensive zone liability. You know how you're not a bad defenseman? You spend more time in the offensive zone.
Yeah, and I think the only way you could even go to that idea, as you mentioned, it's risky with the Krug and Perunovic idea. You're down 2-0, 3-0, then you almost have to force offense. Then it's okay to get risk adverse because – okay, you don't need to worry about the defense as much. But why? Because you're down 3 goals. You need to get onto the board. That would be the only time you do that.
But then you start playing poorly, and then it goes from bad to worse, and then everybody looks as Perunovic. Well, you can't put him up there.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. In less than 10 minutes, we'll talk to John Denton, Cardinals insider for MLB.com. But coming up next, let's play a game of One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on 101 ESPN.
BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
Count that big pen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up here in just a little bit, we'll talk to John Denton, the Cardinals insider for MLB.com. But right now, it is time for One's Gotta Go. If you're new to the show, you have not heard the segment before, it is a very simple game. You give us 4 different options within a specific category. We will tell you which one we would remove from that category. Let's start with this, Alex. One's Gotta Go, Cookie Edition. Cookie! Chocolate chip, peanut butter, snickerdoodle, or sugar. Which one's gotta go?
Ooh, all of these are good. So peanut butter and snickerdoodles are the goat.
Snickerdoodle?
Nope.
I actually think chocolate chips got to go here.
What?
Chocolate chips
Are
pretty
you
rough.
serious?
Yeah, I like me some sugar cookies. I don't like chocolate chips.
Sugar cookies are disgusting.
I need chocolate chip cookies with either pecans or peanut butter chocolate chips, not their actual chocolate chips.
Oh, you fancy, huh?
Yeah, I'm fancy. I'm bougie.
You may not have Club Country access, but you...
Country Club, not Club
yeah,
Country.
sorry.
I don't know.
You sure as hell don't have Country Club access.
I don't know what Club Country is.
And I can't afford the nice peanut butter chocolate chips.
Man, no, no, they're at Aldi's, man. They're less than $1. You should go look into it. Just don't do what I do in the parking lot. But anyway,
go to Sucrose out in St. Charles.
The sugar cookies are really good. But see, here's the thing: if you screw up the sugar cookies, they're nasty. My wife makes them really good.
I'm sorry, they got to go. Sugar cookies are by far, easily, no doubt about it, the worst of this group of.
He also likes brunch, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm
right on everything.
I'm not a big fan of the sugar cookie, but I'd much rather a sugar cookie than a snickerdoodle.
I love snickerdoodle.
Get that out of here.
All right, one's got to go. NHL expansion cities, Alex. Portland, Milwaukee, Quebec, or Kansas City. Which one's got to go?
Kansas City. It's a trash city. I don't even think it's worth it. I mean, I'm not.
Portland's got to go. There's no reason to have an expansion team up in Portland when you already have Seattle.
Yeah, but Portland would be fun because of the rivalries.
Yeah, Kansas City would be fun because of the rivalry with St. Louis.
Kansas City wouldn't even,
they don't even like to invest in their sports teams.
Kansas City doesn't even live up to the St. Louis standards. I'd love to see Quebec. Quebec would be awesome.
Yeah, Quebec would be good. Milwaukee would be good. I actually would agree with BK, though. I would get rid of Portland because you've already got Seattle there. Though Portland does have a great fan base, as you've seen with the Trailblazers. But yeah, Kansas City,
Portland's in Oregon, right?
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
And Seattle's in Washington, and both are next to each other. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm just making Vancouver's right up there.
One's got to go. Alcohols that cause the worst hangover: wine, beer, whiskey, or tequila.
Oh, tequila. Oh, God. Brutal, ladies and gentlemen. Although my Pink Whitneys are tequila. So whiskey. Whiskey makes me think back to my...
I think your Pink Whitneys are vodka.
Oh, okay, so the tequila then.
I was going to say, I thought they were vodka.
To me, it's pink lemonade goodness, so I don't really know what kind of alcohol it is. But
we know.
Yeah, no, tequila's probably the worst.
Wine gives you one hell of a hangover, man.
Wine's good, though.
I would get rid of... I like wine. I've become more of a red wine guy. I'm a Pinot guy. I didn't know that about myself.
Yeah.
I would get rid of the wine. The wine gives you some really rough hangovers. If you're drinking light beer all day, like you take down a 30 rack with your boys, you're out doing whatever, the next day, it's just when it comes out the backside that's the problem.
Yeah, I hammered like 10 of them in Alton last year, and that didn't go well the next morning.
The next day, you're just sitting in the bathroom all day long.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I would probably go with... I'd probably go with the whiskey because that's the one that always ends up catching me by surprise to where I'm like, oh, I'll have another. And then I go, oh, mistake. Mistake was made. And then I wake up the next morning really feeling it.
Whiskey brings me back to the 30th, and I taste chili dogs at the same time. And,
all right, final boys. One's got to go brunch food edition. Boo! None of the above is not an option.
Sure.
Chicken and waffles, eggs Benedict, steak and eggs, or mimosas. Which one's got to go, Alex?
This is the eggs Benedict. That's trash.
Really?
I don't even know. I don't think I've ever had eggs Benedict.
Sauce
no, I don't need hollandaise sauce. God, you are way too bougie. Call me bougie with my peanut butter chocolate chips and your hollandaise sauce over here.
I don't like steak and eggs.
Yeah. Oh, did you Google it?
Yeah.
I love steak and eggs. At least the other ones I can make an argument to have dinner and just not eat the eggs.
It's not like my favorite combo, but I would definitely eat it if it was there.
Waffle House steak and eggs are...
I don't do steak and eggs. Eggs Benedict, chicken and waffles, mimosas. You give me any of those three or a combination of all of the above, I'm having myself a really
Looks like
nice
a yellow
brunch.
slime.
Hollandaise?
I think you would like Hollandaise. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to our NFL weekend look ahead. But next, John Denton reported yesterday that Tommy Edman had surgery on his wrist. How significant is that injury? How much are the Cardinals worried about their middle infield depth with the injuries that have taken place there? We'll talk to John Denton about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Blues were home against the Vancouver Canucks after Robert Thomas was named an All-Star for the first time in his career. He ended up with the game-winning goal last night in a 2-1 victory over the Vancouver Canucks. Blues improved to 19-17-1 on the season, 2 games above 500, 39 points on the season, just 2 behind Seattle for that final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Blues are back tomorrow as they hit the road to Carolina to take on the Hurricanes. Pregame at 6 o'clock, puck drop at 7 here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. Going on right now, USA and Sweden World Juniors action, the gold medal game. Otto Stenberg, the Blues prospect that plays for Sweden, he just tipped home the goal to tie the game at 1 apiece. Theo Lindstein also playing in this game, as well as Jimmy Snuggerud for the Americans. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your Rose and Shot 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffauto.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, the Cardinals insider for MLB.com. He's John Denton joining us here on the show. John, first of all, I hope you and yours had a very happy holiday season. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. You had a report yesterday that had us a bit concerned. And when you wrote that Tommy Edman had off-season surgery on his wrist, this is not something we were aware of until you're reporting on it. How concerning is this, John, that he had surgery that we didn't know about?
Yeah, BK, this is something that knocked him out for 3 weeks last year in July, and it's something that, didn't get better as the season went along. There were a lot of inflammation in there. They gave him the time off. He came back. It never really got a lot better. Tommy struggled with it all the way down the stretch. You can look at his WAR numbers. They fell off last year from what they were the 3 years previous. So, that's something that bothered him. They decided to get the surgery. He actually had it in October, so it is one of those things that kind of went below the radar. But I'd gotten word and seen pictures of Tommy online with a cast on. I asked Mo about it, and Mo said that they got it cleaned up and they fully expect him to be ready for spring training.
So, first of all, John, we heard BK cry an awful lot because of the Tommy Edman injury, so I'm glad that he's feeling a little bit better today. But in terms of going into this season, I mean, when you talk about the infielders / utility guys that the Cardinals have with Nolan Gorman and the back issues, Brendan Donovan and what he had last year, and Tommy Edman with this, that seems to be much more concerning if you're John Mozeliak in terms of knowing that certain areas are taken care of in terms of position, where now it seems like everything's up in the air.
Yeah, that's 3 very valuable guys to this team, and, all 3 of them have gone through some things. So far the reports are all clear on Brendan Donovan. He's throwing the ball. He's lifting weights. He's working out like a madman every day. He's going to be ready for spring training. Tommy's going to be ready for spring training. Gorman's issue is a little odder because it's one of those things that kind of comes and goes, and he really has to stay on top of it. There's a maintenance program that he has to go through before every game. It's all more than an hour long to keep his back stretched out and warmed up and that sort of thing. And, we saw him scratched a lot last year, and Mo was kind of point blank about, this kid's got to figure out what it's going to take to stay in the lineup and stay on the field every day. That, the guys who hang around a long time figure it out, and they're going to need Nolan Gorman to figure out how to deal with this back injury. To me, it's very concerning. Mo said he wasn't concerned by it. When I asked him point blank, I was like, you got a 23-year-old kid with a bad back. How concerning is that? He didn't seem to be concerned, but I think it's one of those big issues because we all know if that kid can stay healthy, he can stay in the lineup. He has 40, maybe even 50 home run potential, but that back could wreck everything if it's not right.
We're talking to John Denton. You can find his work over at Cardinals.com. Follow him on Twitter at John Denton555. John, there is a report that just came out from Jeff Passan that the Giants and Mariners are in an agreement on a trade that's going to send Robbie Ray to the Giants for Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani. I'm not going to ask you specifically about that deal, but it does seem like we're starting to get to the point where some of these starting pitching trades are going to take place now that Yamamoto's off the board. The talks are progressing with Shota Imanaga as well. Do you foresee the Cardinals getting involved in a serious way in trade conversations for a front-end starter at this point?
I think they will. I think they're in talks now. I think they're talking to the White Sox about Dylan Cease along with 4 or 5 other teams. A lot of the guys that we just mentioned, Brendan Donovan, Tommy Edman, maybe even Nolan Gorman, those are the guys that would probably have to be moved in such a deal. Although I do think that Gorman is close to as untouchable as there is on the roster. Maybe him and Jordan Walker. But I do believe that they're looking. They want to upgrade this team. I talked to Bill DeWitt III yesterday, and here was his line, BK. We're always open to improving our club, ... within reason. So, he said, and I asked him, is there more room? And he said, there is a little more room, but it depends on the deal. So it's going to have to be the right deal. The money's going to have to go out if money comes back in. The Cardinals are just about maxed out. That was what Bill DeWitt told me yesterday, that, the uncertainty of the local TV market makes it really tough to go out and, spend millions and millions of more dollars because there's so much uncertainty there. But if it's the right deal, if maybe money goes out and money comes back, I totally could see them doing something like that. I know that's not what fans want to hear. Fans want them to go spend another $100 million, but it's just not going to happen.
Well, it's not our money, John, so we don't have to worry about it too much, right?
I just wanted to spend 6.
Yeah, just go out there and spend 8.
Spend $100 million, just 6, John. That's it.
So John, looking at this team, if we go down the hypothetical path that says they don't upgrade the pitching staff by the start of the season, are they a playoff team in your eyes?
I think they are. I think this division is very takeable. The Brewers are stepping back. The Cubs, as usual, are doing less with more. No franchise in all of sports does less with more than the Chicago Cubs. I mean, why is Cody Bellinger still a free agent? Why is Marcus Stroman still a free agent? Like, the Cubs have done nothing all offseason after talking a big game about Shohei and all that. I think the division is totally there for the taking. The Cardinals can pull off a worst to the first. Yes, they can win the Central Division, but no, unless they make another deal, unless they get a Dylan Cease or a Logan Gilbert or somebody like that, they're not able to keep up with the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Braves. I mean, that's the upper crust of the National League. It's going to take more moves to be able to legitimately contend with those guys for a World Series.
John, I'm just going to ask you, would you have made this deal would you have been looking into this deal if you were the Cardinals with Robbie Ray? I believe he's got another year left this season is the last one that's guaranteed for him at $23 million. He's got 2 more after it if he decides not to opt out at 25 and 25. We don't know the details. Maybe there's some money going one way or the other, but it's essentially cost neutral for the Giants as they're sending out DeSclafani and Mitch Haniger, at least for the upcoming season. Would you have kicked the tires on Robbie Ray if you were in the Cardinals position right now?
Yeah, he's a good left-hander. Those are hard to find. I don't think he's one of those guys who's going to move the meter dramatically. Is he that much better than Steven Matz? At $23 million as opposed to $11 million is a big difference. And we just talked about the money issue.
Sure.
I just don't see the Cardinals going after somebody with the $23 million price tag. Dylan Cease is more in that manageable range that I think the Cardinals could come up with salary going out.
There's been some reporting over the last couple of days about what the Cardinals are looking for when it comes to relievers. I thought going into the offseason, John, hey, just bring back Jordan Hicks. It's fine to get his 3-year, $30 million deal, and everybody will go on, and he'll help you in the bullpen. It sounds like that is beyond their price point, and that they're looking more in the $5 million range. Is that your understanding as well? And if so, do you have any names that you think make sense for them out of the bullpen in that range?
Yeah, it's going to be more of that lower budget range. I mean, talking to Bill DeWitt III yesterday, it sounds like they're pretty much tapped out with what they're willing to commit for now for payroll. It's just, you're not going to get that double-digit signing. And he said, is there more room? And he said, yes, but it has to be the right deal. The Cardinals tend to hold firm, as we've seen with arbitration hearings. Like, they don't pay more than they expect to pay. They have a system that values players, and they rarely go outside of that. So if they can't get a guy at their number, they're probably not going to do it. And that probably means you're considering Phil Matone and you're considering Matt Moore and guys like that. I think they would like Jordan Hicks back. I think they wanted Jordan Hicks back last July. They just couldn't come to terms on a number, and the Cardinals just aren't going to pay. They aren't going to go over what they value a player to be worth.
Do you get the sense that their payroll situation has changed in the last couple of months, John, based upon the uncertainty with the TV rights deal, or is this kind of where they always projected it?
I really, Bill DeWitt III yesterday really rammed home the point repeatedly that the uncertainty with the local TV market, with the TV deals, I mean, that was tens and tens of millions of dollars guaranteed for them every year, and, that may go away. He really rammed that point home yesterday that the uncertainty has them pushed about to the point where, they're almost done. Like, and again, I know this is not what Cardinal fans want to hear, but they're not going to go much further than where they are now in terms of payroll. Unless there's payroll that they can send out, they're just not going to extend much further. He really rammed that point home yesterday repeatedly when I talked to him.
And it's interesting. I'm not even pushing back against it, John. It's a business, right? And if you have revenue that's coming in that may no longer be there, you have to operate accordingly. I get that. I think where I would be frustrated if I'm a Cardinals fan is that was not the company line as recently as a couple of months ago. I remember when John Mozeliak was asked about the TV rights deal, and he had a very different tune to it, where he said, hey, that's not really much of a concern for us right now. That's not something we're paying attention to. We think we're going to be fine. I just found it really interesting that yesterday Bill DeWitt III, who's the business guy, had a very different explanation on that side of things.
Yeah, I think they think they're going to be okay this year, but there's a lot of uncertainty past this year, so they don't want to go long-term deals. Like, if you look, and we talked about this long before the Cardinals signed anybody. They got Sonny Gray for 3 years. They got Lance Lynn for 1+1. They got Kyle Gibson for 1+1. They didn't go long-term on anybody. They're telling you right now that they don't trust the future with this uncertainty with the TV thing. So, you look at what they've done already. And they're just not going to give out a 5-year deal. They're not going to give out a 3-year deal to a reliever right now, especially if it's Jordan Hicks and he requires $30 million. They're just not going to do that, from what I've been told.
John, it's Tanner Hendrickson. With that being said, could that alter their plans if they were to explore like a Jordan Walker extension in spring training?
I'm not sure yet. I don't know if that's lower on their priority list. I do know that getting Goldie locked up is higher on their priority list. That's something they want to do. I do love the model that the Atlanta Braves used as far as locking up their young players for a long term. It's something that the Cleveland Indians did years ago and had a ton of success with. It makes a lot of sense, but I think that's kind of lower on the pecking order right now. I think like getting Goldie locked up is a big priority, and that's something that could come, in January. It could come early in spring training, but I would totally think that one would rank higher than the Jordan Walker extension.
John, we appreciate the time as always, man. Great to be able to catch up. I'm looking forward to seeing you out there at the winter warm-up next weekend. People can follow you on Twitter at John Denton 555 and follow your work over at Cardinals.com. Did want to give you an opportunity, by the way. I know the Baseball Writers Association has a really cool thing that they do each and every year, right around the same weekend as the winter warm-up. How can people get involved with that with the Baseball Writers Center?
Yeah, go to Google and Google St. Louis BBWAA. The tickets are going fast. I think there's just a couple of tickets left for the VIP event. We're going to have Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn doing a Q&A with fans. They're going to be able to talk about their story and their road to get to the major leagues. They're going to rip on each other and talk about video games and how they were roommates in Springfield and all that good stuff. And man, Tony La Russa is going to be there to get the red medal award. Members of the 2004 team are going to be there. Man, if you've got a baseball fan in your life and you're looking to get them a gift or a little pick me up while it's dark and gloomy outside, get them a ticket to this banquet. It's next Sunday night, the 14th, and it'll be a good time for any baseball fans in St. Louis.
He's John Denton. Always appreciate his time. John, thanks so much for all of the great reporting. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
You got it. That's John Denton, one of the best in the business. Always appreciate him joining us here on the show. Coming up next, we're going to get to our NFL weekend look ahead. I want to react to a couple of the things that John Denton just had to say there. We'll get to that next year on 101 ESPN.
Run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you missed anything from the show today, including our great conversation with John Denton of MLB.com, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Alex, we got to go relatively quick here because the fast lane's coming up next. By the way, Grant Francis done a great job for us today, helping out back in the studio. But we just talked to John Denton, and he basically said, hey, the Cardinals do have some legitimate concerns about what their plans are going to be moving forward, money-wise, with the Bally Sports Midwest situation. Totally understandable. I get that completely. But then this quote from John Mozeliak is what frustrates me. This should not have been the way that they talked about this earlier in the offseason if they were going to operate the way that John Denton just said. Quote, Mozeliak, and this comes, by the way, from Derek Gould. Mozeliak said he has not been told by ownership to scale back spending due to the rights fee concerns and that the team has received all of its payments in 2023. So that is something from an organizational standpoint that they want to be focused on. Quote, we want to make sure that we can maintain that. We understand that this is product driven. We want to improve the team to help that happen. That is the plan. He then was quoted in The Athletic saying, I do think there are a lot of question marks for next year, but we have other revenue sources, specifically with attendance. That's something that from an organizational point we want to be focused on. We understand that that is driven by our product. Well, if you believe that that is driven by the product and the best way to improve your product is by spending on players that will help your product, then I guess there's a disconnect here. And if you are super concerned about what is going to take place in 2025 with your product on Bally Sports Midwest with the revenue deals, or with the revenue because of these TV rights deals, you should have been upfront about that with your fan base. That is your paying customer. Tell them, hey, we are trying to do as much as we can to compete this upcoming year, but we want you to bear with us while there is a bunch of uncertainty that is coming up ahead. We don't know what 2025 and beyond looks like. We have our payments for this season. We're going to try to do as much as we can to improve the team right now. But after that, bear with us. And if they are as concerned as they suggest for 2025 and beyond, they should not get that Paul Goldschmidt deal done right now. They should wait to do that and then see what the horizons look like in July, August, September, etc. And then if you are in a good spot to be able to add money to the payroll, do it then. Do not do that right now. If you want to get a Jordan Walker deal done because that adds minimal salary to the books for next year, go ahead. Paul Goldschmidt, I would absolutely not be doing that. I would be waiting to see what comes up on the horizon.
It's wild to me that we're talking about how they're not sure what the future looks like and they don't want to be committed to something, but yet let's give our 38, 39-year-old first baseman a multi-year contract extension, but not our young player that we view as the future of this organization. People's frustration from John Mozeliak, it's not just because of the lack of moves. To me, it's because of the lack of honesty. Yep. And that right there is why other general managers are upfront about everything.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We will talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. Enjoy all of the football this weekend, the hockey, Blues back in action. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.